Look out. Yes, sir. Look under your bed. Look in your closet. You never know when they're going to jump out and get you. My name's Roddy Piper, and you're listening to Piper's Pit Pod here at Podcast One. Boy, we've done a lot of these. Done a lot of them on all different topics. I'd like to throw out a hello to Bobcat Goldthwait. He's was a guest a couple weeks ago and gave us his heart, and he's a great guy. I'm looking forward to this show. I look at it as it's two different approaches to the sport, business / entertainment of professional wrestling. And the guest that I have this week is a man that he sure made a mark with the WWF at the time, with the WCW. I'm not sure, the WWE had some tremendous success in the WWF. And I'm really interested. He comes from a different place than I come from. Just to lay down so you folks can follow what's going to happen here is, I guess it's kind of a philosophy on the business of professional wrestling. Actually, you almost need a degree in psychology from the Einstein Institution to put 93,000 people in a building. Psychology is really what wrestling's all about. Just so you know myself, I'm going to run it down real quick. The number of territories that I've worked. It'll be territory for Vern Gagne, into the Maritimes for a couple of years, and over to Japan for a couple of years, Texas, Kansas City. Once I can remember, L.A. I was in L.A. Got my first break in L.A. I was here on top when I was about 20 for 3 years, and then went to Portland, Oregon for about 2.5, 3 years, Hawaii, a couple months, over to Charlotte, North Carolina. From Charlotte, worked Charlotte and Atlanta at the same time, and then went up to New York. Why I'm telling you this is because back in the days of the territories, it took a lot of intestinal fortitude. If you were in, for instance, Los Angeles, and I'm the main event, what you should do is get out while you're hot. That's very difficult to do because it's hard to get hot. And when you go to the next territory, being in my case, Portland, Oregon, nobody knows you. You got to start all over again. So that begins a thought track and begins, you make your own handbook almost of how you're doing things. So without further ado, I'm very grateful that this man would give me the time. We're going to talk like men. So please give it up, please, for the one and only Vince Russo. Hello, Vince. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Roddy. How are you?
Good. I'm good. I got one wing down. Got a rotator cuff fixed, but, coming back and getting ready for Christmas. I heard, how many kids do you have, Vince?
I have...
I'm sorry?
I have 3.
3. Little boys, little girls?
Nah, they're big boys and big girls. My boys are my boys are 27 and 24 now, and my daughter's 19.
Very cool. I have 4 children. It's very important because that brings a certain weight on your shoulders when you do what we do for a living, and you have to answer to your wife and the 3, in your case 3, mine 4 children. It means that you're playing for keeps. And only God can give you, hug them, huh? Hug them as much as you can.
Yeah.
I know. I got all the respect in the world for that. They say you need a license to hunt, you need a license to fish. Any jerk can have a kid. It takes a man to be a father.
Right.
Yeah, and it's Christmas, so thanks for coming on. So listen.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just to get started, could you just run me by maybe when was your first contact as far as your interest in professional wrestling? And I'm sorry, I don't really know. I think maybe you went to Johnny Rods. Just work with me here. Give me an.
Well, I think, Roddy. I mean, and I'll try to go through it as quickly as I can. Just to kind of give you a little background, so you kind of know where I came from.
Yeah.
I think it's so important, honestly. The very first experience I had with wrestling, because I really do believe that first experience is what molded me just into the type of style and of what I was a fan of over the years. And my first experience with professional wrestling, I was probably about an 11 or 12-year-old kid. And if you remember back in the day, you used to have those little black and white, television sets, and you used to have to play with the stupid antenna.
The rabbit ears.
The rabbit ears to get the picture in cool. And I mean, back then there was only a couple of channels, and among those channels was usually, one UHF channel, believe it or not. So, one day, as a kid, flipping across on this 13-inch television set, I mean, I remember this like it was yesterday. And all of a sudden, I stopped like dead in my tracks, because what I saw on the screen was Luscious Jimmy and Handsome Johnny and Captain Lou Albano.
Great guys, man.
Oh my! And the minute these guys started talking, obviously cutting a promo. I didn't know what that was back then, but I was completely mesmerized, completely. And keep in mind that was my first experience without even seeing a wrestling match. So like that's how wrestling was first introduced to me. And I guess maybe
that could be scarring.
Excuse me. No, absolutely. It could be scarring and it could be addicting.
Yes.
But I mean, the characters that the Valiants and Albano was, I mean, I'm so happy that like that was the first thing that I saw, because it hooked me. And then, again, once I started watching, now this is the WWF, Vince's dad is still running this thing.
Gotcha.
And then I'm watching this, and then, I'm meeting people like, the Big Cat Ernie Ladd.
Oh yeah.
And
he was great.
The best. And, Chief Jay Strongbow, and, and just these, and I'll use the word, just these characters that, like, as a 12-year-old kid, this was the best thing I ever saw on television.
It's great.
So, that carried on with me. That never changed. I mean, always a fan of the, grew up in Long Island, always a fan of the WWF, WWE, and always, and that's just progressed over the years. I mean, I'll never forget the build up and the, just the pomp and circumstance around, WrestleMania 1 and the, Rockin' Wrestling Connection with MTV. I mean, but again, like with me, it was just the unique characters and the stories. At
that time too, being, I think it was in WOR, as I would said. And,
yes, exactly.
The Captain, Handsome Jimmy Valiant, and those guys were electric. They were.
Oh yeah. And again, it's like, man, I'm so happy. I mean, that I got to see, all at once. And, I try to tell, people about this today, and like, you can't even explain it to a wrestling fan in 2015. But, to see at the same time, Albano and Blassie and the Grand Wizard of Wrestling, just forget about it,
Yeah. So did you go with Johnny Rods?
Yes, yeah. So what happened, Roddy, was I had a couple of video stores on Long Island. I was in my own business, and Blockbuster was just coming up. So they put me out of business because I couldn't compete with them.
Gotcha.
And at that time I had a baby son, and I had to do something for a living. And, I was always a wrestling fan, and I did some promotions at my video stores, with wrestlers. I knew somebody that had a wrestling radio show at the time. So I'm like, you know what? I always was enjoyed this. Maybe this is something I can do. So the first thing I did, was I went to Rod's wrestling school. But the reason that I did was I didn't want to be a wrestler. I didn't want to be a manager. I didn't want to do anything in front of a camera. What I really wanted to do was I wanted to get an education of how this business worked. If I was going to do this for a living, I wanted to understand it. And I knew that the only way I could understand it was, to go to a wrestling school. Johnny Rods was another guy that I grew up on. Be around the boys, work an independent show, be in locker rooms, and really see how this business worked. And that's what I did. And that from the start gave me a great education on, what this was. I mean, I was a fan watching it, but now learning it, I was more and more intrigued.
Gotcha.
So basically from there, to make a long story short, I funded my own radio show for a while. I sent a letter to Linda McMahon that I was looking for an opportunity. Linda called me back, and I started as a freelance writer for the WWF magazine.
So your first contact with the WWF was Linda McMahon?
Yes, because I knew, Roddy, I knew, let's face it, everybody that wanted to have a career in the wrestling business and their mother, were writing to Vince McMahon, and I'm like, that isn't going to fly. But I knew Linda worked there. But I had no idea. At that time, I had no idea Linda was actually in charge of publications, and I went to school for journalism. I have a degree in journalism. But I didn't know that at the time. I just figured, maybe Linda McMahon will read my letter. And, sure enough, Linda did. And, I mean, within a couple of days, she called me.
So tell me, you picked up ring, you picked up the phone. What'd she say?
I was just in total shock. I mean, honestly, what are the odds,
Pretty slim.
Yeah, pretty slim, right. And, Roddy, you'll appreciate this. I mean, at the time, like I said to you, I lost my businesses, and, I had a baby. Yeah. And, Roddy, at the time, I was working at a salesman. There's a big electronics chain in New York. It's still there. You might know it just through advertising and promotions. It's called PC Richards and Son.
Sure.
And that's what I was doing. I mean, here I was with a college degree in journalism. I lost my business. I had a baby. I'm selling television sets to make a living.
Doing what you can.
And doing what I can. And, Linda called me, and she started me. She gave me the opportunity to work as a freelance writer on the WWE magazine. It was WWF magazine at the time. I would write an article a month and get paid $150, and that was
it's Pampers. That's Pampers.
Exactly. And that's all I cared about. I mean,
Gotcha.
That's all I cared. And again, the way things happened was it was only a matter of months before they released the person who was the editor of the magazine. You may remember him because I know you worked with him. His name was Ed Raschuti.
Sure.
Yeah, Ed was released, and I went in to interview for the job as editor, and I got hired, and that's how I got myself in Titan Tower.
Gotcha. And who did you do the interview with?
There was a man by the name, I don't know if you remember him. He was the publisher. His name was Tom Emanuel. And he was the publisher at the time.
Gotcha.
The magazine at that time was a big deal. I mean, it was a really big deal. There was no internet, there was no podcast, there was nothing like that. The magazine was huge, but he was the one that interviewed me.
Gotcha. So he interviewed you, and how did you become? Take me to all of a sudden they go, here's the keys to the kingdom. You're the head writer. Now, what year was it?
That I started actually working there?
No, I'm sorry, that when they actually gave you the keys to the kingdom, like how did you make that transition?
It was probably, Roddy, about like 1996. But again, when I started as the editor, between that time and when I started writing on the television, another huge break came. It's almost like, Roddy, these things happen, and I have a belief in God, and you have a belief in God, and we don't know why things happen, but sometimes they happen, and like they're supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. But at the time at the WWE, I was the editor of the magazine, and I was on the second floor. All the offices, Vince and Pritchard and Patterson and all the big wigs were on the fourth floor, right?
Yes.
Well, what happened was, the magazine was on the second floor. Vince McMahon brought in Bill Watts to start working on the television, because Watts was going to start working with Pritchard, because it was like one of the probably 20 times by now that Pat Patterson was retiring.
Okay.
So Pat was retiring. So Vince brought in Watts, and the funny thing, Roddy, is they didn't put Watts on the fourth floor. They put him on the second floor. They put him on my floor. So when Bill came in, he would sit in our conference room and he was watching hours and hours and hours of WWF programming to get familiar with the product. Mm-hmm. So of course. I'm a wrestling fan. I didn't grow up on Bill Watts' territory, but I knew who Cowboy Bill Watts was. The guy was a legend.
Yep.
So what I would do is, he was on my floor. I would go in and I would just start watching wrestling with him. And then, he would start picking my brain and he would start asking me questions. And then, Bill Watts being Bill Watts, there was so much red tape, at the WWE at the time. There was this person in HR. I don't know if you remember her. Her name was Lisa Wolf.
Sure I do.
And Lisa, and she was like the Gestapo. I mean, Wolf. You couldn't do anything.
Well named.
But right. But Watts being Watts, cut through the red tape and just turned around to me one day and he said, "Would you like to sit in with the creative team?"
Gotcha.
And, and Roddy, it's like, again, the funny thing is, that wasn't my goal. I didn't even know how television was really written. It's not something that I, dreamed of or thought about doing. But when he gave me the opportunity to learn that end of the business, I was, absolutely positively. And that's originally how he was able to get me in on a creative level.
That's how it happens a lot of time. It's just being in the right place at the right time, around the right people. And so you're with Watts, and now you're in the creative meeting. Before we get to that segment, because I want to hear it, I need just to take a break to pay the bills, and we'll be right back with Vince Russo. Look out. When you're ready to buy a car, TrueCar is changing car buying forever. Yes, TrueCar helps a car buyer get rid of the fear that they might overpay. Every day, TrueCar users receive negotiation-free, guaranteed savings, and TrueCar users save up an average of $3,221 off MSRP. When you're ready to buy a car, you just follow 3 easy steps. Download the TrueCar mobile app or go to TrueCar.com to find out what others have paid for the car you want. Then register to see upfront pricing information and lock in your savings. Third step is simple. Take your guaranteed savings certificate to the TrueCar certified dealer for a better hassle-free car buying experience. Some features not available in all states. With TrueCar, you can save time, save money, never overpay. To see how much you can save on the car you want, simply download the TrueCar mobile app or visit TrueCar.com today.
Hey fans, Adam Carolla here. You know my podcast. It's the most downloaded podcast in the world, according to Guinness Book of World Records. Always available 24/7 at podcastone.com. Great guests, great topics, and new listeners always welcome. So thank you and mahalo.
Yeah, man, you'll get used to bagpipes on this show, I'll tell you. So we're with Vince Russo. And Vince, we were just speaking about you were hired by Linda McMahon and as he writing for the WWF magazine, and you got Cowboy Bill Watts on the second floor, and he needed some ideas. I can see this. I can see him, if you're a wrestling fan, I can see him bouncing ideas off you. And you formed a relationship where Bill says, hey, you know, I got a creative meeting here. Why don't you come on down and, sit in with it? Yeah? Am I pretty close?
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay, so just take us through to where, kind of wanting to get into your psychology and where you wanted to take it, and how did you become head of creative over Watts, just in that little section there?
Well, Roddy, I'll tell you, and again, I'm trying to keep that. I hate, bro, I hate being long-winded, and, I actually want to hear you talk because I've been a Roddy Piper mark for 40 years. But anyway, to make a long story short, Roddy, believe it or not, Bill Watts brought me in. I went to one creative meeting at I think it was Pat Patterson's house. It was me, Watts, Patterson, and Pritchard. It was the same exact day that the O.J. Simpson verdict came down. That's how I remember it. Okay?
Gotcha. Okay.
So this is just how things work. I went to one meeting. A couple of days later, Bill Watts calls me in his office and says, Vince, shut the door. And I said, Bill, what's going on? And, again, it's like just having the opportunity to kind of work with, just old school legends and kind of seeing how the mind works and just how brilliant they were. But, Bill said to me, he goes, Vince, I want to let you know that as we speak, there's conversations going on because they're going to let me go.
Okay.
And I was like, what? He goes, Vince, I haven't been able to get a hold of Bruce, haven't been able to get a hold of Vince, haven't been able to get a hold of Pat. I've been down this road before. So I just want to let you know, thank you, for everything. I'm sorry that, it worked out this way, but I'm telling you, I'm probably not going to be here tomorrow.
Gotcha.
So, Roddy, sure enough, he wasn't there tomorrow. He knew. Bill was dead on. So now here I kind of am I'm kind of like the odd man out, So
yeah.
right after that, Pat did leave, and they brought in Jim Cornette to work with Bruce Pritchard.
Okay.
So I would be sitting in on the creative with Pritchard and Cornette and Roddy. I would sit there and I would keep my mouth shut and not say a word. And I was, just trying to, get as much knowledge and learn as much as I possibly could. But I in being totally honest with you, I have to tell you, I felt as a wrestling fan, as somebody that had been a fan now for a long time, I felt that they were writing television that really wasn't relevant anymore. Times were changing, society was changing, and Roddy, I'm talking about this was really a low period for WWE. I'm talking about, this is the period of, T.L. Hopper, and the Goon and Freddie Joe Floyd and
Gotcha.
Who. It was like that era, right?
Yeah.
And then Roddy, I'll never forget it. I was at Bruce's one night, WCW pay-per-view, and Hulk Hogan did the NWO turn.
Gotcha.
And I sat there and I'm like, we're dead. We're dead. It's over. We're dead. I knew WCW was going in the right direction, and I knew the WWE was going backwards.
Why was it going backwards, do you think?
Roddy, here's the thing. This is why I think everybody in that office at the time, or that inner circle around Vince, okay?
Yep.
They were wrestling guys. I mean, that's what they did their entire lives. I mean, you know Pritchard's history and
Yes.
Cornette's history and Pat Patterson. I mean, that's all they did. I had a little bit of an advantage because I wasn't from that world. I came from the world of being a fan and being a writer. Like I said, I went to college for journalism, and I think I had an idea, and a big fan of television, I think I had an idea for what the people wanted at that time. So, again,
What was that? What do you feel that the people at that time, you got Pritchard and, Cornette and
Right.
yourself, and was it Cornette that was trying to do more of the structuring, or was it Pritchard? Or was it both of them? When you say going backwards, and I'm not asking you to, I'm just kind of generalizing.
No, Roddy, not at all. Roddy, it's real simple because I tell people this all the time. This is really the truth. At this time, Roddy, it's about 1995. It's going on 1996. Okay,
Gotcha.
They were, and the NWO happened. Okay,
Yep.
and Cornette and Bruce were just doing still, very traditional wrestling. Traditional wrestling that I literally had seen from the first time I ever put on a television set and saw the Valiant Brothers.
Gotcha. Okay. Old school, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, really old school. Traditional wrestling handbook.
Gotcha.
If that, and I knew what that was. I grew up on it, and my deal was, listen, society's changing, times are changing, people are changing. Wrestling fans are changing, and like my whole thing was, we need to bring this product to where society is right now.
Okay.
We need to mirror what's going on in the world and society right now. That
Gotcha.
was my view of where the wrestling business needed to go. And like I said, this is about, 95, 96.
Gotcha. So then from there, who actually came and made you the head writer, kind of like gave you the key to the gate? Because when you get that key, I remember when I first came to New York, Don Morocco had been, and Jimmy Snuka had really been drawing a lot of money. And when I came in, Morocco goes, here, take the torch. You can have it. I didn't understand that for about 20 years. Here, take the damn torch. You can have it. You think it's so much fun. Yourself, but the amount of power that you have when you get the torch or the key to the kingdom, who gave you the key? And once you got in that position, just like where were you coming from, or that you wanted the product to come from that made it contemporary, like you were just speaking to me, more up to date? Where? Like maybe your psychology or what was the first battle plan you had?
Well, right. What happened at that point was I was getting so discouraged with where the product was at the time, and I actually started shooting my own angles in the magazine just to entertain myself.
Gotcha.
I would write stories and angles in the magazine that weren't happening because it was difficult for me to write about what was happening on the TV because I didn't think it was that good at the time.
Gotcha.
To make a long story short, Roddy, what happened was I saw what was happening at WCW.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was the future of wrestling at that time. I wanted to go there. So I had some friends there. Jeff Jarrett was there at the time. Kevin Nash was there at the time. And they told Eric Bischoff about me. And Eric Bischoff wound up calling me. And we had about an hour conversation, okay? Roddy, I was so loyal to Vince McMahon and the WWE, and I felt so bad about that conversation that what I did was I made an appointment with Linda the next day because I wanted to ask Linda McMahon the question, if you think all I'm capable of is writing your magazine, you need to tell me that. Because I knew if she would have said yes, I knew that at that time, having just talked to Bischoff, I had to make a decision, even though I wanted to work for Vince and my heart was the WWE. Well, as I'm starting to talk to Linda, Vince McMahon walks in her office and takes a seat.
Gotcha.
So now, Roddy, you know this, bro. I don't need to tell you this, but I think there comes a couple of times in every man's life where it's like, pardon the expression, but it's kind of like you got to take your balls in your hand, and it's going to go one way or another.
Yep.
You know,
you betcha.
You're either, you know that.
Got to take a stand.
You're going to either go to the next level or you're going to be fired. But
Yep.
at that point, a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
And
so
you have a family.
I got a family.
Okay.
So that's exactly what I said to Vince. Listen, if you think I'm just capable of writing this magazine for you, I need you to tell me that. I want to hear that from you. Roddy, he got mad at me. He cut a promo on me. I thought he was going to fire me, and he basically, how dare you talk to me that way? Who are you? And maybe I was a naive, stupid kid at the time, but I said to him, Vince, I don't know what you're getting so upset about for. I just want to help you. I don't want any more money. I'm not looking for any kind of power. I just know that I can do more for your company. I don't know why you'd get upset over that,
What'd he say?
Well, he really didn't say much. He kind of left the office at that point, right? So, Roddy, again, this is how things work out. The following Monday, Raw does a show, and half of it is being shot in the States, and the other crew is in England. So they're going back and forth. Roddy, I'm watching the show from home, and I'm like, this is horrendous. This is a horrible show. So sure enough, the following morning, I get a call from his secretary. You remember Beth?
Sure.
And she goes to me, Vince wants to see you up in his office immediately. So, Roddy, I'm telling you, I took the elevator from the second floor to the fourth floor, and I'm going up there to be fired. I mean, I know Vince is hot. I know he was mad at me because of the conversation we had the week before. The company's at an all-time low. It's time for the boss to make an example out of somebody. And it was going to be me. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, am I going to go back to PC Richards? Like, what am I going to do, right?
Yeah.
So to make matters worse, I go in his office now, and Roddy, when I walk in there, he's got they're all in his office. His whole inner circle is in his office. It's him, it's Pritchard, it's Cornette, it's JR, it's Pat Patterson, it's Shane McMahon. Gotcha. So now I'm like, okay, the boss is going to showboat, and he's going to make an example in front of me, in front of all these guys, and I'm like, I'm still okay with. At that point, I just want to get it over with. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Well, he's got the magazine in his hand, so okay, let's end this.
Yeah.
He takes the magazine in front of everybody, throws it down on his desk, and says, "This is what Raw needs to be." And Roddy, I was just shocked. I was more shocked than anybody in that room because I was expecting that meeting to go one way, and it went completely the other way.
Did the other people in the room, were they privy to the fact that Vince was going to do that?
Roddy, I honestly don't know, but bro, you know how the wrestling business works. He just gave me heat with every single person in that room, and I knew it. I mean, there was no question. I didn't ask for that. I didn't expect that, but making that statement in front of all those people that had been there for so many years, I knew the guy had just put so much heat on me, which really made me understand I've got to perform now. For
Absolutely.
For him to take that kind of a stand for me in front of these people, if I don't perform for him now, it's going to make him look bad.
Okay, and so he's putting the fire to you. That's one thing that, Vince McMahon, obviously, we've had our differences, he loves to hate me. But one thing that Vince does is he plays people against each other, bringing you in to his credit, bringing you in and not telling these boys and making you the head writer all of a sudden shakes everybody up because everybody's got families to feed. So all of a sudden you're the head writer. I assume, don't make me assume something. Did he put you on and say, hey, I want Vince Russo to be leading my boat?
No.
Okay.
At that time, Roddy, I'm not the head writer. At that time, what happens is J.J. Dillon went to WCW. Bruce Pritchard slides over into J.J. Dillon's spot. So now Cornette is the only one writing television. Vince puts me in Pritchard's spot. So now it's Vince, Russo, and Cornette writing the television show.
Okay. What did you think of Cornette as a mind for the business?
Well, here's the deal, Roddy, and I say this all the time, and this is what happened. Jim Cornette, I had the pleasure and the privilege of working with Jim Cornette and Dutch Mantell, okay? These guys, bro, literally, they have a level of genius. And you don't know. First of all, you would never know by looking at them. Let's be honest.
True enough.
Right. And second of all, you wouldn't know that unless you worked with them as closely as I did. These guys were the closest thing to genius that perhaps I ever worked with. But what happened was, Vince brought me in. It's Vince, me, and Cornette. We're in those meetings, and Roddy, I start talking about this Attitude Era without talking about the Attitude Era. And Roddy, this is basically what I said because it was very fundamental and very simple. I said to Vince, Vince, the Wrestling 101 rule book? I said that, where if you're a wrestling fan, you know what's going to happen, you know when it's going to happen. There's a certain way of doing things in the professional wrestling business that has not changed. Okay. I said, Vince, we need to take that rule book and throw it in the garbage. If the fans and the viewer at home think we're going to make a left, because in wrestling you always make a left, we're going to make a right. If they think we're going to make a right, we're going to make a left. We need to go the complete opposite of where wrestling has always gone. And I said to him, that's going to create the must-see TV. All of a sudden, wrestling's not predictable anymore. All of a sudden, you have to tune in every single week to find out what's going to happen.
Now, when you say that, it's interesting. If you're going to take a right, then they take a left. Part of the psychology also is, just in my own opinion and what I've learned, is we tell them what we want them to think. They don't tell us. They don't want to know the ending of the movie. We take them on the ride. They don't take us on the ride. When you talk about the psychology of it, do you agree with that? Because I'm getting to Crash TV here, which I think is something you coined.
Yeah, I did. And Roddy, I agree with exactly what you said. Like you just made the statement, they don't want to know the ending.
No.
What I'm saying is they already knew the ending because the ending was told a very similar way all the time.
Gotcha.
So I'm agreeing with exactly what you're saying, but like I said, at that time with the WWE, if you were a fan of the WWE, you knew what they were going to do. It just became very, very predictable because a lot of, the stories and the angles, they were just being done over and over again.
Okay. So now all of a sudden it's Crash TV, which is your coined phrase. Am I correct?
I don't know that. I called it that.
No big thing.
Yeah.
And
I don't know.
Okay, so here we go. And I know this feeling. All right, I'm up to bat. So what are you thinking here? Okay, I got this outfit, I got the key, I got the boss's blessing. What's the first things you start to do? What do you change? Take me for a ride.
Roddy, what it is it's this. Well, first of all, just to get back to the Cornette thing, just so I could put a button on that thing real quick.
Yes, sir.
When I was pitching this to Vince, I could tell he was listening. I mean, I could tell. I knew him, and I could just see it. In the meantime, Jim Cornette was, literally pitching traditional wrestling.
Gotcha.
And I knew Vince. I knew where the company was at that time. I knew they were not in a good spot, and I knew Vince was looking to try something different and take a chance because at that time he really had nothing to lose.
Gotcha.
So Vince made the decision. Okay, we're going to take Cornette out of this equation, and you and me are going to write this TV.
So is this when? Yeah. So is this when Vince went in, and I'm not being facetious, but just so everybody can understand it, went in, took out the catering, took out everything but kind of the coffee pot, and they had it in a smaller arena, and they dubbed it Raw. Is that about this time that we're talking?
No, it's a little after that, right?
Okay.
Like we had already I went to those early shows in the Manhattan Center when, I wasn't even working for Vince yet. This
Gotcha.
is a little past that.
Okay. So now you've got it. There you got the Manhattan Center, and what's the first thing you do?
Well, Roddy, it's real simple, and I think this is where the Crash TV comes into play, okay? And the psychology was really simple, Roddy. We were up against head-to-head with WCW, okay?
Gotcha.
So basically, the way I wrote a television show was this. You have to assume now the wrestling fan on a Monday night is home, sitting in his armchair, and he's got the opportunity. Keep in mind, there wasn't DVR back then, okay?
Gotcha.
So, he had the opportunity to watch one or two wrestling shows, WCW or the WWE. So my psychology was, you have to make this 2-hour show a runaway train from beginning to end. So when that wrestling fan is sitting there with his choice, you do not give him one single opportunity to switch over to WCW, because guess what? If he switches over to WCW, he may not come back. So that was the challenge, Roddy, in writing the show. There's another show out there. There are competition. We're on at the same time. That viewer is begging you, put something boring on so I could see what they're doing on the other channel. Put something boring on. And the minute they switch off your show, you haven't done your job. So that was my mindset literally in when I would sit down and write a show.
Okay, so what one place I wanted to do my homework on Crash TV, and the way that it was worded in some piece of business that I looked at was that the Vince Russo had introduced Crash TV, which consisted of there was sexual content, profanity, swerves, the unexpected heel turn, shoot interviews, inside language kind of being, our heel, babyface, whatever. Kind of, I don't know if you want to say opening the curtain a little bit, or it definitely turned up the steam. Is that accurate?
Yeah, right. I don't think we opened up the curtain a little bit. I don't think we went there. I don't think we really need to go there. But it was, again, Roddy, if I could use the phrase, must see TV. If you're a wrestling fan, you must watch this show every Monday night, or else you're going to miss something, and they're going to be talking about it at work the next day, and you didn't see it.
Gotcha. What is Vince McMahon's take on with it, like the sexual content and profanity? It was fairly strong.
Mm-hmm.
And the swerves, we understand that. How was Vince looking at that? I guess if you're drawing money, he liked it.
Well, Roddy, again, I think the mindset changed a little bit. And unfortunately, I think the mindset today has gone back to the way it was in wrestling before the Attitude Era. The mindset was, Roddy, and again, I was a big part of this, and I have no problem telling you that because, Roddy, I promise you, like I said, I got educated watching Roddy Piper. Roddy, I can tell you, I can, and I talked to you a little bit about this when we spoke. I can go back to those pre-tapes that you guys did for WrestleMania 1. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that had never been done before. The extent of pre-tapes up to that point was Vince McMahon with a microphone, interviewing Bruno Sammartino. That's what you saw in wrestling. Now you guys are in the gym. You're rocking back and forth on the floor. we took it to a different level.
Gotcha.
But so
there is.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. There is Crash TV. What it equals in, just for me, another word for that would be like hot-shotting a territory.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And hot traditionally, as time has told us, hot-shotting try that in English too. Hot-shotting a territory can be good if you have a territory that's down, which it was, and you just like you said, it's a must-see, and you get in there and get wrapped around. But at some point, you got to plane out on a level, a higher level than when you first came in. And if you hot shot too long, then it's like you can't top yourself. Was that ever an issue with you? Like containing yourself? Go ahead,
Roddy. Can I tell you something? And I'm so glad you brought that up because
sure.
I've heard that a lot. Mm-hmm. I understand what it is. I totally understand and get the concept. And Roddy, I say this, and I don't say this in cocky fashion whatsoever. Okay, Ed Ferrara would soon come in as my writing partner because once we started going with the Attitude Era, and once we were on track, Vince, kind of wanted to pull himself away from the writing so he could do everything else that he had to do, and he had the confidence in me and Ed. Roddy, Ed Ferrara and myself, we had such confidence in ourselves and our writing and the talent roster and the people we worked with that we never looked at it as hot-shotting because our frame of mind was we are going to make this week's show better than last week's show. And we always wanted to make the current show the best show. And Roddy, we used to agonize off of that. You want to talk about, blood, sweat, and tears going into a 2-hour television format. Mm-hmm. Every week we gave everything we had and left nothing on the table so this show would be better than last week's show.
I got you. I believe that.
And Roddy, we honestly, we did that until the day that we left. So I hear what you're saying. I understand it completely. But when you're so focused on making the next show better, mm-hmm. I believe that you can if you yes. You're set on making that happen.
I hear you, and I believe you can to an extent also. But I do know that, not to be redundant, but if you're hot shotting, it's terminal, and it's a good tactic to get the territory back on a certain plane, and then business as usual. And I just ask you, Vince, as family men, and everybody in there, in the dressing room, most of us are family guys, man. When you shoot this Crash TV and then you leave, it leaves those guys behind and leaves them out because the territory isn't as exciting anymore as what Crash TV was. Did you ever worry about that, or was it something that you looked and said, "Here, I want to hand you back this, better than the way you gave it to me," kind of idea? Here's your key; it's got gold on it now.
Well, Roddy, let me tell you a couple of things about that, because if anything, I think you will appreciate this. Okay, Roddy, the way we were writing those shows and the energy we were putting into those shows, Roddy, Vince. At the end of every television taping, he would come to me and he would say, Vince, did I get it all? Meaning, did he get every single ounce of energy from me that I had to give him? He would always ask me that, and without a shadow of a doubt, I said, Vince, yes, you got every bit from me. I'm going to the hotel and I'm going to bed now, okay? Well, Roddy, what happened was, keep in mind, Ed and I are working at that pace. All of a sudden, Roddy, SmackDown comes along.
Gotcha.
We were never told a SmackDown was going to come along, and all of a sudden we're told, okay, well, now you guys are writing, 4 hours of television a week, not just 2. Okay?
Gotcha. They're growing.
Yeah, they're growing. Roddy, so this is what happened, Roddy. It at that point now I'm starting to feel a little burnout with the second show, right?
Yep.
So, Roddy, I go to Vince, and Roddy, I broke down in his office. I started crying because I knew what effort we were putting into Raw, and now all of a sudden he gave us a whole other show, never spoke to us about it, didn't bring in any more writers. He just gave us another show.
But Vince, I got to tell you, though, and I appreciate your position, but like when we were doing the first WrestleMania building up to it, there was in Pittsburgh, there was this Hojo's we'd all stay at, and all of a sudden, I'm making up the time, but I'm pretty close, around 10:30 in the morning, I get a knock on my door, and they drag me up to, making it up, room 818, and there was the WWF background and Mean Gene, and, I'd put water in my hair, I'd kick out, making it up, 15 interviews and go back to bed, and then boom, this is God's truth. One time I woke up in Manchester, England, got to Heathrow because I needed to go to Connecticut, Manchester to Heathrow to Connecticut, went in the box with Vince McMahon and did 3 hours of VOs, put me on a plane to Alaska, worked in Alaska, and I was trying to get home, got a plane from Alaska to Seattle, couldn't get home, so I drove home. Got there at 7:30 in the morning, opened the door, and my wife says, "Good, just in time to take the kids to school." But, there was never, because of what was going on, it's like burnout or I'm tired, really wasn't allowed. Now, I'm talking as talent.
Yep. Yeah, no, and Roddy, I totally get that, and I hear that, but I guess, Roddy, like a part of it was, and I know you felt the same way because I saw it every time I saw you perform. A big part of it to me was pride.
Absolutely.
I put so much pride into Raw being the best that it could be, and now, with the whole new show, I didn't want Raw to suffer. So, I knew now I had to put that same energy into both shows. And Roddy, I was willing to do that, but here's what happened. I go in Vince's office, I break down crying because I'm spent, I really am. And I said this to Vince, I said, and Roddy, you know how it is. I was never at home at that point. Nope. And now I have 3 babies at home. Okay.
Yep.
Roddy, I lived in Connecticut for the job. My wife's family, was in another state. So now with me working all the time, my wife's home with the 3 kids and I'm not around.
I get that in one. I hear
you. Get that? I know you do. Yeah. So my proposal to Vince was, I went in his office. I said, Vince, listen, I'm never home. My wife's here by herself. She has no help. What I wanted to do was I wanted to move back to. I wanted to move my wife back to where she was from, so she could be around family. And, if that meant me seeing her on the weekends and living in Connecticut during the week, whatever the case may be. But, Roddy, the fact that I was leaving my wife and my kids by themselves was tearing me apart,
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
So Roddy, like I said, I got no intention at leaving at this point. Like you said, okay, now, we got to suck it up. There's more work on the plate. I understand that, but I got to put my wife and my kids in a safe environment.
Without a doubt,
Yes.
I respect that 100%. But at the same time, you've been given the key, and with that comes a certain responsibility, especially in our business where there isn't really no rules other than sell a place out,
Right.
and the ratings. And, in my case, my wife and my kids went on a mountain in Oregon, and they were close to my wife's mom and dad.
Right.
So there was a fallback system I had to protect my own family, and away I go. And I understand you're getting no problem with that, but you've introduced Crash TV and all these things are going on.
Right.
So like
Right, let me
help
just
me
finish
out
the
here.
story because I think you'll understand. So basically, Roddy, it's like, okay, we got this SmackDown show now. Okay, I'm having a mental lapse here because I know what this is going to mean, but I'm on board. I'm going forward with it, but I want to move my wife back to where she's from.
All right.
Okay, Roddy, Vince, without missing a beat. Okay. And I know probably of anybody I have ever told this story to, you will probably understand it more than anybody. Without missing a beat, he looked me in my eye and he said, Vince, he goes, I don't know what the problem is. He goes, you're making enough money now. You should be able to hire a nanny to take care of your kids.
Got it.
Now, Roddy, I know you're not Italian. Okay, Roddy,
No, sir.
I'm a proud Italian New York man.
I hear
And
you.
when it comes to family, that right there was probably the worst thing that anybody could have ever said to me.
Stay right
And
there, Vince. Let me take a break, and we'll come right back. Ladies and gentlemen, Vince Russo will be back in a flash.
Guess what?
What?
Pauly Shore's now on Podcast One.
Try and experience when I'm about to chirp in your lobes, okay, cool?
That's right. You can download new episodes of his Interested podcast every week. And while you're at it, check out all of his 2014 episodes for free through the end of January.
Whoa, buddy.
So if you're a Pauly Shore fan, there's no better way to start the new year.
This is what put this place on the map.
It's our gift to you from podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
Okay, we are back with the Italian daddy, Vince Russo. I'm getting him real used to bagpipes here. And Vince Russo is with us, and we were just talking about his family and Vince having the key to the kingdom, and all of a sudden SmackDown comes up, and Vince says to you, the money you're making, you can afford to hire a nanny. Where did you go from there, Vince?
Roddy, again, being Italian, being from New York, the way I was raised,
Yep.
the minute those words came out of his mouth, it was over. I was done. You couldn't have said anything more wrong to a person like me than that. And I knew if I did not, stand up for my family and be a responsible husband and parent at the time to 3 kids, I knew I totally would have been disrespecting my entire family. And the minute those words came out of his mouth, right then and there, I knew it was over. I knew it was done. I knew how much he really cared about me. And that literally was the beginning of the end.
So, okay. So let me just pick this up. We got Crash TV going on, and business is picking up for the WWE or WWF at the time. And we're in the Manhattan Center.
No, we're real past that.
We're real past that. Okay.
Yeah. This is now. Now they're on top of the mountain. They're doing the highest ratings of all time. Eric Bischoff has been fired from WCW at this point, because at that point the WWE had we totally had turned the tables upside down on WCW.
Okay. So what year are we talking right now then?
We're talking 99.
99. Well, that's okay. Well, let's get With all respect, though, I want to there was a tragedy there in 99. And I'm just respectfully, but I'd like to get your take on, and again, listen, I just want to get your take as a man on Owen Hart, and I want to be respectful to his family and to you, but I would like to know, we're talking Crash TV, and I understand it. When a territory's down, it's a smart thing to do. You got, hey, it's, sex and rock and roll, a little bit of profanity, and, my wings are as black as anybody else's. And I talk about, I spoke of a little bit earlier about when you hotshot a territory, you got to, and you agreed, you got to keep kind of topping yourself, and it is exhausting. Anybody that's ever wrote, if they never wrote television, they have no idea how many hours, and then when you leave the guys, you're still thinking about it in your head. So I respect that, but in a endeavor to keep things rolling, there was an idea to have Owen kind of like fly down into the ring. Could you just start from A and just explain that to me? Again, being respectful. I'm not.
Yeah. No, right. No, I'm right. I know, because and we spoke about this briefly, Roddy. There wasn't an idea. An idea was never discussed. First of all, we're talking about this. This was a pay-per-view, so it wasn't Crash TV. It wasn't television. I mean, this was a pay-per-view, and as you know, pay-per-view is that's where you really pay off the wrestling, and you give them the long match that they want to see, that they pay money to see. So it's a totally different animal than television. So,
but television is the one that what you did on TV last is what makes that pay-per-view draw.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, Roddy, the pay-per-view that we're talking about is already written. It's done. We're finished with the pay-per-view.
Who wrote
the pay-per-view? Me and Ed Ferrara.
Okay.
And Roddy, the pay-per-views. I mean, you know this. I mean, the pay-per-views are a lot easier to write than the television shows, because it's all wrestling.
Yes.
So Ed Ferrara and myself, the show's done. So I'm in the office by myself. It was probably, man, if I had to guess, Roddy, I'd say it was probably a Wednesday or a Thursday night, and it's late. It's after 6. Not many people are in the building. I'm working in my office. I have the format in front of me, and I'm dotting the I's and I'm crossing the T's. All of a sudden, I get a phone call at my desk from a guy that had worked at the WWE for years and years and years, and I know that you know him. His name is Steve Taylor.
Got it. I know him. And
he was in charge of building operations for decades, at the WWE. He was there from the early days.
Yes, he was.
So I have the show in front of me. Steve Taylor calls me, and Steve says, "Listen, Vince," he goes, the rigging crew that repels Sting, they want to come to our pay-per-view on Sunday to show us, what they can offer the WWE. He goes, "Is there anything they could do?" Mm-hmm. So, at that point, I'm like, "Well, Steve, let me take a look." So I go to my format, and I'm looking up and down the format, seeing if there's anything these guys could possibly do. And then, it's just me at this point. I come across, Owen Hart is, as the Blue Blazer, is wrestling the Godfather that night.
Okay.
So now I'm thinking, okay, these are the guys that repel Sting. They want to come and show the WWE what they can do for them. Why not give Owen a grand entrance? If they can repel Sting, if they can repel Owen, like they repel Sting, it'll be a great entrance for Owen. It'll be good for Owen. Why not suggest that? So that's exactly what I did. I said, well, Steve, I said, there's this one part in the show. I said, Owen's the Blue Blazer. I said, if they want to work on his entrance, that'll be something cool to give to Owen, see if they're interested in doing that. And I basically left it at that.
Okay.
So my point is, Roddy, it was never originally written into the show. It was not something we discussed. It was not something that was important to the show. It's not something we planned on doing. It was this one phone call that triggered the conversation.
So it didn't get a lot of attention.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So, then, I got, okay. Owen Hart, I was told, was afraid of heights. He had a problem. He didn't really want to do this piece of business. Did you try the rigging before? Did whoever these guys are, whatever, did they test it out with Owen? And these are things I've been told, and I'm looking for the truth.
Well, Owen, Roddy, I could tell you this, okay? And Roddy, if you want me to go through my drawers here and find a Bible and put my right hand on it,
no, not
I
necessarily.
Gladly will.
We're talking like men here.
We're talking about, yeah, absolutely. First of all, Roddy, you have to understand, okay? I loved Owen Hart, without a shadow of a doubt, and you knew Owen. Yeah. If you couldn't not love Owen if you know him. It's that simple. If there was one person that didn't get along with Owen, then I suggest you take a long look in the mirror. Something is wrong with you.
Absolutely.
That's the type of man Owen Hart was.
Absolutely.
So, he was loved by everybody.
Yep.
Okay? If Owen Hart, and this is a conversation too, Roddy, and I wish we had a little bit of more time, but I'm going to bring this up too because this was a part of it.
I'm going to give you the time. Let's take the time.
Okay.
Let's get something done. With all due respect, it's important not only to the business, but it's just important to the people that were around. I'm here. Let's go through the whole damn thing to the WCW and tell the truth.
Roddy, there's something very important here that I want to get out. Okay?
All
right. So my point is this. I love the man. I loved him.
I hear you.
Was a joy to work with. Okay.
True.
If Owen Hart would have told me at any time, I'm afraid of heights, I really don't want to do this, I feel uncomfortable, Roddy, end of story.
Was it possible he could have said it to someone else?
But absolutely. No question.
In trying not to make waves, sometimes, you don't want to really go for the establishment. You're kind of like, hey, I don't want to do this.
But, Roddy, can I tell you what I think is the flaw in that story, to be honest with you?
Go ahead.
Okay, Roddy, he never said a word to me. As a matter of fact, Roddy, let me just go forward with the story, then I'm going to back it up.
Sure.
I saw Owen after they did the test run. I saw him. He was in the jumpsuit. He was at the coffee urn getting a cup of coffee. He had already practiced it during the day. So, I said, he was getting coffee. I go over there, I'm getting coffee. So, of course, Owen, how'd everything go? Everything went great, no problem. Vince, can you do me one favor? I said, bro, whatever you want, Owen. He goes, listen, right now, the way it's written, my entrance is second after the Godfather. He said, Vince, if you do it that way and the Godfather's already in the ring, when I'm coming down for the rappel, I'll be like a piñata. You know, Godfather
Sure.
should be able to beat the crap out of me while I'm getting my harness off. And I said, bro, I said, you're dead on. Absolutely right. No problem. No problem. Owen, we'll change the entrances. You'll come first.
Okay.
No problem. End of conversation.
So,
okay.
Gotcha.
Wait, right. Let me tell you one more thing because I think this is vital.
Go ahead.
Now, when you say to me, could he have told somebody else? Roddy, here's the thing, okay? There was one instance, okay? If you remember, and you probably don't, bro. I mean, you've been through a billion angles in your life. But the angle was, a couple. The angle was, Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart were tag team partners, and Deborah was involved in the time.
Okay.
At the time. Okay.
Gotcha.
One of the things I suggested to Owen, prior to this day was, Owen, we want you to have a crush on Deborah because we thought it would be funny for an Owen Hart to kind of like have a schoolboy crush. And, here's Deborah, this voluptuous woman, and, there's, good old squeaky clean Owen Hart. We just thought it would have been entertaining.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Gotcha.
When I pitched it to Owen, he said to me, Vince, he said, please, even though I know this isn't work, even though I know it's a story, Martha would be extremely upset with that.
Sure.
So he told me he
Martha,
had a
his
problem.
Wife.
His wife told me he had a problem with that storyline.
Gotcha.
So, right then and there, I said, Owen, end of story. Done. You're not comfortable with it. Your wife's not comfortable with it. It was just an idea. If you don't want to do it, then we'll figure out something else to do. End of story. And Roddy, here's the thing. And you'll understand this, Roddy. And I'm glad we're talking about this, and I'm glad I'm talking to somebody who has been, just prominent in the business for so long.
Thank you.
Roddy, I can tell you, okay, as a television writer for 3 different companies, and, I wrote from like 95 to 2012, whatever it was, I never, ever made any talent do anything that they were uncomfortable doing. If somebody said, I don't like that, I'm not comfortable, blah, blah, blah,
I understand.
we would say, but Roddy, here's the problem. There's still that psychology in the business that if one of the boys, says that they don't like an idea or that they feel uncomfortable doing something, they're going to lose their spot. They're going to be punished.
And that's a very real, paranoid subject. Is very real, that threat. Because I want to say this, that, and I appreciate what you're saying, that Owen came to you, because let me just show you the way that I can see this. Is if it was me, and they wanted me to do this, and I went to the office and was talking with you, and I'm going, listen, okay, my wife isn't go. I'm going to myself. My wife's not going to go for this. I'm scared shitless of heights. So I don't know. So I go to the guy and say, hey, Martha will never buy. So I've already turned one angle down. And because anybody in the WWEFG, they'll just fire you, boom, like that. Sometimes for no reason. It doesn't matter. It's business to them. And so if I'm going along and I got something to do and I get one concession, then you're afraid for your spot. You're afraid for your job because, they use that and have for years. And even if I was afraid of heights, there would become a time where I'm going in my head. And I think, you and I said this from the top of the show. I've got a family to feed. Okay, I got my wife. She's never going to go for that. It's a bit of a concession. I don't want to do this. But, all right, here we go. And I'm looking at Crash TV again. And I'm looking at, okay, all of a sudden everything's spiced up and boom, the gals with wonderful voluptuous breasts and long legs and a little profanity and heel change here and boom, 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 and things are happening, and it's one of those kind of things where you're very on top of the attention span of the watcher, which you were explaining to me earlier. When you made your TV, did you put everything into it, and the next one's got to be better and better? And then all of a sudden, here you are, and you're kind of painted in a corner because nobody knows what's going to happen, and all of a sudden, you're kind of in. It's strange. There's a language that we speak, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But that okay, I'm up there, I'm going for it, and all of a sudden we have a tragic mistake. Is that a possible scenario?
Roddy, can I tell you this, Roddy? And
anything you want to.
Yeah, and Roddy, I swear to you, this is the God honest truth. Okay?
All right.
Roddy, all the time that I was writing television, and I'm including, a solid 3 years being connected to Vince McMahon's hip. Okay?
Gotcha.
Roddy, my experience in all three companies, okay, I never one time, and this includes my relationship with Vince, I never one time witnessed any performer who was punished in any way, shape, or form, whether it was spot, whether it was money, whether it was to be sent home. I never once experienced one performer who was punished because they spoke up being uncomfortable about an angle, or not liking an angle, or not wanting to do an angle. Never one time in my experience. Now, listen.
I know dozens of them.
I know you, and that's what I was just going to say. Roddy, I can't speak for your time because I'm sure that was a totally different animal. But what I'm saying is when I was writing, when I was in charge of that, I never experienced one time where somebody said, I don't like that, I'm uncomfortable with that, I don't want to do that.
Gotcha.
And they were punished.
Okay, let me just put this in so we're on the same page here. Owen Hart would come from the same school that I come from.
Yes,
and
I agree.
And so all the territories back in the day, one time a year would come to Vegas. And I'm just going to lay out this pretend scenario, but this is very real, what they used to do. And all the promoters in Vegas would get together in the NWA, and they would have a meeting about how, a business, everybody's business, trying to help everybody out, don't cross the lines, etc. And then they would break it down, and everybody had to get out that did not have a financial interest in it, and they had their closed-door meeting. If there was I'll just take myself. Let's say I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I'm a main event, but I'm getting hard to get along with. And they're talking about that, so they want to teach me a lesson. The way they do it, one way of them doing it, we'll use Bob Geigel in Kansas City at the time was, I believe, the president of the NWA. Roddy Piper's working in Portland, and Bob Geigel would come to Portland and say hi to Don Owens, and he would come to Roddy Piper, and he'd say, hey, kid, listen, I could use you. You're great. I don't want you to burn any bridges here. And the rule was back there, if you were a champion, you needed to give 6 weeks. If you were, if you were a hot property, 4 weeks. And, if you were on the bottom card, 2 weeks notice. He says, when you're ready to go, give your proper notice now and come on to Kansas City. I got big, holy cow, I'll give you some more money. And Roddy goes and gives his notice, whatever the time is. And, in my case, we pack up the family and we go to Kansas City and, we're ready to go, get the kids in school, and then they do not book you. They just stop. I know this has happened for a fact, and it's an old, okay. With that said, Owen would come from that same school from his dad. And, there's been times again, there's a language that we speak with our body. And sometimes we're afraid, because sometimes I'm afraid. Like, I wouldn't take a dive in WrestleMania. Because why? Because, I got ice cream bars, I got towels, and I got kids. And this now is going all over the world, and I worked my ass off to get here with no help from anybody, going through territory. And that's not true. That's not true. With a lot of help from a lot of old school guys that taught me. And all of a sudden, what do you mean you won't take a dive? Hey, this is going all through the world. And it was the war to settle the score, which is promoted by MTV. Hogan's a champion, and they still want to beat me. And I'm the hottest heel they got in 4 weeks that I've been there. It's wrong. So, with me saying that, what I'm saying is with Owen, he may not have wanted to do, but aired to somebody else, another one of maybe his brothers or guys that he rode down the road with, like, I really don't want to do this. I'm scared shitless of heights. I don't want to do this. Whatever it is. Boom, he's up. That's another take on it. And would he go back to Vince Russo, who maybe he had like a whole lot of respect for, didn't want to displease him, already had gone and played a card, hey, my wife's never going to go for this, please. I got enough heat. Can we just... And, then there's like an obligation, because, again, Owen and anybody else that's a real pro is trying to work his way up that ladder, and as he's there, it's your job, your responsibility, and we'll just take myself. If I'm in the main event, it's my responsibility to fill that arena, because everybody underneath me on the card, they're expecting a good payday. And if I'm not selling it out, I need to be taken out of that spot. At the same time, hey, Rod, you better have your stuff together and sell that out. On the flip side, Vince McMahon, hey, Rod, you better sell it out, because I've just put about, $4 million worth of TV time into you. So it just doesn't become quite so black and white from the school I come from. And, I'm going back to with Owen and repelling down.
Well, Roddy,
and I'm just talking to you, okay?
Yeah, no, Roddy. Hey, listen, but here's the thing. I respect everything you're saying, and I don't doubt anything you're saying. But here's the thing, Roddy. You have to also, if we're going to look at it from that point of view, which is fair, and I understand, because you just explained to me from a wrestler's point of view, and I totally understand, and I get that. But now you have to look at it from, Vince Russo, the writer of the show point of view.
Right.
Not being a wrestler, in the situations you were in, and in the situations Owen was in, and not having lived that, where maybe you did something once, you didn't do something once, and you were punished, or you didn't get pushed as quickly as maybe you thought. Having lived those experiences that you guys lived back in that day, which was a different time, right?
Yep, I was blackballed.
Yeah, well, my mindset is completely different. My mindset is, okay, I'm the writer of a television show. My job is to write a script. And like I said, Roddy, I just want to remind you and everybody else, this was not originally written in. It was never part of the show.
And what do you mean? But when you say that, you just want to make that note, but it did become one. Why is it not important that it was kind of like an afterthought? Does that mean that it was kind of rushed in there, maybe making it possible for a slip up? Or just
No. It just means that originally, when we wrote the show, this was not written as part of the show.
Okay.
The only reason this was written into the show was because that phone call came from Steve Taylor, and the rigging crew from WCW wanted to do business with us. That's how it came about. Mm-hmm. But I want to get back to my point anyway. But I understand everything you just explained to me and where Owen's head may be at. Okay. But you got to understand where Vince Russo's head is at. it's 1998, 1999, whatever it is. I'm the writer of a television show. In this case, a pay-per-view.
Uh-huh.
I've not experienced, what wrestlers have experienced. The only experience I have is, the last 3 years when I'm writing with Vince McMahon.
Yep.
So my mindset is going to be, if there's something written in this show that you're uncomfortable with, man to man, you're just going to tell me you're uncomfortable with it. You
But I
understand?
can't. I don't know, but I can't.
But my point is, I don't know that. I didn't experience what you experienced. All I experienced was, okay, I've been working with Vince for the last 3 years.
Gotcha.
There's been guys that haven't wanted to do certain things. I never saw any of them, get punished or get their push held back or it cost them money. I never witnessed any of that. Therefore, in my mind, if there's something here you're uncomfortable with, you tell me about it. It comes out of the show, and it's just that simple. Just like the scenario did with with Deborah and Owen. I mean, it's that simple.
Vince, with all respect, because with writers, and I'll just generalize, but if you're writing, that's a serious power you have there, the power of the pen, and and I still to this day, if you're writing and you've never experienced the gutter. Or the competition to get to the top, it's very difficult to understand the psychology. And I'm going to give you one here that I've never said that you did to me. And as little as it seems, it made me, and I need, we're talking man to man. It made me, I'm trying, it made me aware of you. It made me like, it was an insult. You insulted me. And I knew from my own bringings up through the business, I knew what I had to do. Because you have to have the respect of everybody to draw money. And it's going to sound trivial, but it's not. And it was this simple. I think it was a WCW. And yourself and Ed Ferrara were coming in. And it was not my first time, but it was the first time I was in a building where you were the head writer and Ed, was, I guess, your 2IC. And I'm waiting in my dressing room or whatever dressing room I was in. And Ed Ferrara comes in and sits down and said, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Ed. Hey, how you doing? I'm Rod." So this is what Vince would like. Vince Russo. This is what Vince Russo would like. Now, in the in the business of professional wrestling, I hate talking about myself, but I have to. I'm Roddy Piper. Even before, I've drawn a lot of money. And I know if I come into a territory and the boss doesn't come to me and say, "Hey, how you doing?" I know there's a problem. So when Ed did this, I brought up Owen at the same time. And you were in that dressing room maybe 45 seconds later, a minute later. But what that told me that you had no plans or nothing in the, hey, there's nothing wrong with you not having plans for me. There's nothing wrong with that. But myself, again, now I've got 4 kids. I'm in the dressing room, and I got a brand new guy in charge, and he sends his 2IC to me with instructions from you. And, right away, I need to get your attention, son, because I'm Roddy Piper. I've been stabbed 3 times trying to keep this business going. I know it like the back of my hand, and I know it, and I do understand the progression of it, and I understand Crash TV, and I respect it to a point. But there's a situation where, and you've been unaware of this, I'm sure, but that made me take an attitude Well, okay, we're being combative, are we? And, then, yes, I can get out of hand. Absolutely. But that's the kind of body language or kind of language that when you're in our position and you've got so many people trying to take your spot, that you can't allow that to happen. What do you think, why didn't you come yourself and say, hey, Rod, how you doing? Because you've always been respectful. I have but hey, Rod, I'm Vince, I want to say hi. This is Ed. And I know you're busy. I know you're busy and you're writing a show, but, there's what is there? There's Hogan, Flair, Piper. How many are alive that have drawn this kind of money? And he's in your arena. That's the way I took it right away. Because I've been blackballed 3 times. Just for those of you were saying that never been punished. When I was in Atlanta selling it out, Jim Barnett blackballed me through the entire United States, and I had to go over to Santo Domingo and San Juan to make a living until Jimmy Crockett took me back, and then I was up to New York. So I've been fired and blackballed, and they turned me into the IRS. So because you're not aware, hey, listen, I'm not making this a fault. I'm saying this is what happened, is you didn't come into the business like I did. So you don't have the same feelers, nor do you have the responsibility of feeding my family. That's my responsibility. And so I need to guard my slot and my money, and I'm the only guy on the line. And always, we're individuals. Nobody sticks up for me. It's only me, and it's the way this business has been. And that's what caused the rift between you and I, is a lack of respect. And if you don't have the respect coming in, they're gonna shit all over you. And I knew that. And that's what started a little bit of dissension between yourself and myself. I've never told you that. I don't think I've ever told anybody that.
Well, Roddy, I have to tell you, fair enough. Okay?
And you know what? And lay it on. I'm not,
No, Roddy, I'm going to tell you. Fair enough. Okay, Roddy, I think I can say without a shadow of a doubt that there has never been anybody more respectful than me to the legends of the wrestling business. And nobody knows better than me because, you are, one of the guys, and I want to say grow up, saying I was in my 20s when you had your, hot run at WWE.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I wasn't a baby,
No,
but the fact of the matter is,
still a long time ago.
I know. Listen, Hulk Hogan. If anybody doesn't see eye to eye, it's Hulk Hogan with me.
Yeah.
I'm the first one to say, and I've said it to nauseam, if there wasn't a Hulk Hogan, if there wasn't a Roddy Piper, we can go down the line. But I'm just talking about legends now. Vince Russo would have never, A, I would have never had a job in the wrestling business. B, I would have never been able to support my family through the means of the wrestling business. Without you guys, it would have been non-existent. And I
appreciate that. But if we just take a look at it for a second, because I guess what we're talking about here is the difference in the way we came into the business, the different platforms that we come from. And you as a writer, I understand what you're saying, that you didn't understand that about and if indeed there's any, consideration to what I've said there. Yeah.
But Roddy, let me just say this, because here's my point. Now, Roddy, listen, you're as old school as they get, and I understand that, and I totally respect that, and that's how you're going to look at everything. That's the school you're from, and you totally I totally get that. And
but let me introduce this, if I may. So when you come in, at that period of time, when you came in that building, you had I'll just use the words crash TV. It's a good word for it. You had kind of the innovator of, and you had made great use of it, and now you're moving to the WCW, and in your building is a guy that started Piper's Pit, which is way, way before its time, and created it. And because I knew Vince McMahon was trying to bring it to what it is now, and I knew he was, but nobody could find that button. Nobody could really rap until I said to Vince in St. Louis in a bar, you give me 5 weeks, a bow tie, and a mic stand. If I don't get the job done, I'm out of here. And the reason I said that was guys that were trying to get over, and I got respect for all of them, but Orndorff, Hogan, Schultz, we were killing these mid-card guys. And I said, listen, if I'm going to wrestle, you're going to have to pay to see me wrestle. I'm just going to cut an interview. And then they'll have to pay to see me wrestle. And then all of a sudden, here comes Frankie Williams. And so Piper's Pit was a form of Crash TV only with safety nets. And there could be no damage to the business done because I could catch it on all fronts from the education I had from the old timers. So if you got the guy that invented Piper's Pit, that really goes along, goes just your Crash TV. Go ahead.
Roddy, can I just point this out, bro?
Please.
Listen, I grew up on Long Island, New York. Okay. Ed Ferrara grew up in New Jersey. Okay, so the East Coast. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm an Italian guy. Ed Ferrara is an Italian guy. Okay.
Gotcha.
We both grew up in the same era of wrestling, and we're both huge fans. Right.
Gotcha.
Roddy, could it be as simple as here Roddy Piper's in the building? Okay, Vince Russo, Ed Ferrara have never worked with them before.
Uh-huh.
You're royalty in the business, and to be quite honest with you, I mean, it has nothing to do with years later when I got to meet people, but I was a much bigger fan of yours than I wasn't a Hulk Hogan guy. I was a Roddy Piper guy,
well,
right?
Thank you.
Could it possibly be, Roddy, that we were both such fans of yours and we had such a great respect to you, and we had never worked with you before? Could it have been as simple as Ed Ferrara getting to you before me?
That is a possibility without a doubt. But
Roddy,
go ahead.
Can I tell you one other thing? And Roddy, I got to tell you something, bro. You're not going to understand this, like where you come from, right? Roddy, you got to understand. I came into the wrestling business. I was a wrestling fan. I didn't have the experience of a you and an Owen. And I guess at the end of the day, Roddy, you could say, yes, I was a mark. I was a mark, but
I hate that word.
I do too. I do too. But I got the best education that I possibly could. But I was a fan. I didn't lace up the boots and get out there and wrestle.
Gotcha.
I was a fan. So, Roddy, you have to understand, when you have somebody like me and somebody like Ed, for that matter, and all of a sudden, Roddy, you're working with these guys that you grew up with and that you absolutely idolized, and you remember moments in time, and all of a sudden you're working with these guys, Roddy, as a human being, and coming from the business where I did as a wrestling fan, whether you understand this or believe this or not, Roddy, there's an intimidation factor.
I can see that. I can see that.
Roddy, wait, let me just say this.
Okay.
If I come into a building and there's a Roddy Piper that I never met before, and it's almost like, bro, come on. If I'm a wrestling fan, seeing Piper's like seeing freaking Elvis. I mean, it is, Roddy. If it's easier for me to say a hello to an Eddie Guerrero or a hello to a Conan or a Chris Benoit before I approach Mr. Piper, that's just human nature. So my point is, and again, it goes back to the same situation with Owen.
But you're the boss.
I understand that, no doubt about it. But I'm not the traditional boss, as in a Vince McMahon, and I'm really not the boss, Roddy. I'm the writer of the television show. So again, whereas you're looking at things one way, and I totally understand that. Ed Ferrara getting to you before Vince Russo, I just don't think I immediately would look at that as a disrespect, as opposed to, well, Ed Ferrara was a fan too, and both of us never worked with you before, and maybe he just got to you before I did.
Well, it's interesting, but it's an interesting scenario. If Lou Thez was in the building, I would, whether I'm wrestling him or not, and I have wrestled Lou Thez, no matter what I'm doing, I put my bag down and I get over to Mr. Thez and I say, hello, Mr. Thez. It's an honor to have you here, sir. Thank you very much. And leave him alone. When I come into a dressing room, and everybody else of the old school, I come into a dressing room and I put my bag down and I come to the first guy I see. I says, hey, how you doing? And I shake his hand. And the next guy, hello, it's a pleasure to see you. To everybody in that locker room. The referees, even the guys that drive those trucks, when I come in, I wait, hello, sir, thank you for bringing it. It's what you do. It's a dictatorship there. That's what you have to do. I understand that you didn't come from that. And I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it. But
Roddy,
it's not a defendable argument. Ignorance.
Well, Roddy, first of all, I couldn't tell you what happened that day. I absolutely, positively apologize if you took it as a lack of respect. I mean, I do.
And you don't have to, because I get this, but there's a diva thing there too. But it was just from the way I was raised.
That's not a diva. But can I point something out to you?
Yeah.
Roddy, there are so many things that you told me in this conversation today, right? Okay, two huge things, which, Roddy, listen, bro, Vince Russo, okay, if you take the entire body, okay, Vince Russo is half a pinky on the body of Roddy Piper, okay? End of story, okay? But, Roddy, there were two things that you said to me today that I've been in the business for 23 years, that nobody ever sat me down and explained these things to me, because I didn't come from that old school. I wouldn't have that education. I wouldn't have that knowledge. You taught me today, you spoke to me today about, okay, what Owen Hart's frame of mind may have been.
Yep.
You know, you took me all the way back to the old school and explained to me, well, learn my lesson. And this is where, like, you know, I would think twice before I told somebody, you know, that I didn't feel comfortable doing something, right?
Yeah.
Then you also just explained to me, you know, your years in the business and everything you learn, you know, the proper etiquette, you know, when there is a Roddy Piper, you know, in the business, and how you're supposed to conduct yourself. Roddy, why do I have to now be out of the business and have been in it for 23 years without somebody who had that experience and had that knowledge pulling me to the side and smartening me up and passing that along to me? How am I supposed to know all those things if I didn't live that life? And,
but it's one of the qualifications for the job, Vince. You know, it's like in our laws of America, when you're speeding and you go, I didn't think it was a 35-mile-an-hour zone. Well, you know, you got to know if it's 50 or 35. Ignorance is no excuse for not knowing the law. And I use ignorance as in lack of knowledge. Last thing I'm trying to do is bash anybody. Just, we're talking it out. And, you know, just to clean up Owen, you know, and I have so much love and respect, as do you, as you said, for him and his family. And Brett, he's my cousin, man. I love him. So much respect for that when you're the boss And that's the way we look at it. The head writer, it's coming from you. Yeah, we can go to Vince and override you, but you really wouldn't want to do that. If you gave me something, Vince Russo, if you gave me something and I go to Vince McMahon, override you, I wouldn't do that because it makes you look stupid. The same way, hey, I come straight to you. But it's almost a man thing. You know, there's a little bit of it, Vince, where it's not. It's a man. It's the proper thing to do as a man, and you don't necessarily have to know the business. But you know, when Elton John walks in the door, you know, you go, "Hey, Elton, how you doing, bud? I just got here. Listen, I got this song." You know, that's just a given there. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, you know, it makes all the sense in the world to me. And you know, like I said, you know, bro, I when I tell you I apologize from the bottom of my heart, I sincerely mean that because
I don't need that though. It was just
no. But again, bro, it's like I can't say what happened that day. I mean, it would never in a million years have been a lack of disrespect on my part. Okay. I mean, again, if anything, it would have been intimidation, and I'm being quite honest with you as a guy that was a wrestling fan and watched you for years and years and years and years. I don't care who you are, whether you're the boss or you're Caesar or you're the president of the United States, when all of a sudden this person is in front of you for the first time, there is an intimidation factor. I mean, for all I know, I could have purposely let Ed get to you before me because I was, you know, it's not that I was afraid to approach you, but you know, Roddy,
there's something I left out I shouldn't have. I don't want to you know, that tactic is an old time tactic. So, and I should have said this, to have the booker go and say hi and the promoter doesn't, because then you 1-2 punch.
Yeah, and Roddy, I would never know that in a million years.
Ladies and gentlemen, listen, I'm not stopping. This is great information for me. I'm really enjoying being with Vince Russo and talking like men. You know, get your soft card, buy your Rowdy Piper or all out of bubblegum soda pop. I'll be sending you some, Vince. And got bubblegum coming out, villain t-shirt, and rowdypiper.com. It would be nice if I was polite enough to ask my guest. Wasn't there a book that you were working on, or?
No, I have a couple of books out about the WWE.
Yeah, what are the names of them? One is
one is called Forgiven, and the other one is called How WCW Killed Vince Russo.
And something about how do you lose $60 million in a year?
Exactly. Yeah. You know?
Yeehaw! I can't help myself. Doggone bagpipes every time either makes me want to make love or fight. There's so much trouble playing them damn things. Again, my guest, and very gracious that he would, Vince Russo. Thank you, Vince.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. You know, I was just voicing some what I had learned and what I have been taught in some people label it the old school, and that body language, and you know, you can call me, poor Roddy. Vince didn't come and say hi. Ed Ferrara did, and Roddy threw a temper tantrum. I can totally see all that. I haven't given Vince Russo quite yet whatever he needs to say about that, and there's some great history here. I'm proud to be part of it. So, Vince, we were talking, okay, so Ed Ferrara comes in, and I take offense to it. And I tell you this for the first time, but it's something that, it was something that if I didn't cut it off then, it would just take me, or it would push me to the side, in my own mind, okay? Push me to the side, and it was a kind of a spark, or it was a, hey, they don't have any plans for you, what should you do, Rod? You know, paranoid? Yeah, maybe, but they're still after me.
Hey, Roddy, can I point something out to you? And
Please do.
please, and can I tell you something? You being who you are, it really means a lot to me that you listen to this because, like, quite frankly, 95% of the other people, if they didn't listen to this, I really wouldn't even care. Okay? But this is the thing that made it very difficult for me, not only in the business, but really more after I left the business. And you know, this is very hard for people to understand, but this is some of the baggage that I carry to this day that is very hurtful for me and is very difficult for me to overcome on a daily basis. Now, when you, on the first part of the interview, you know, you basically said that last thing, like, you know, the booker, you know, I guess sends man number 2 in first, and, like, I guess that's the way they used to do business.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, obviously, Roddy, if I wasn't in the wrestling business, I mean, how would I have ever known that? I mean,
they would tip you off.
Yeah, well, what you just told me right there, like, is news to me. I mean, I've never heard that before. But, like, that's
Does it make sense to you, though?
To the type of person I am, no, it wouldn't make sense to me.
Okay,
I mean,
so
I can understand. I can understand completely how it makes sense to you as one of the boys, but it wouldn't make sense to me because Vince Russo, the man, I would never send somebody in there first to meet Roddy Piper.
But would Ed Ferrara not say, or would you not agree, hey, listen, we got this for Piper, well, you take Piper, and I'll go and get Flair, or whatever it might be?
No.
Wouldn't you not be on the same page on that?
We don't do, no, we never did that. Ed and I never, you do this, I'll do this, we do this. We basically did everything together.
So where were you?
Well, no, but no, I didn't mean together like that. What I meant was, like, we'd leave with the show, and we'd both be working on that show with the same people, going to them at different times. And so it's not like, okay, you know, Ed, you take care of Seg 1 through 6, I'll take care of Seg 6 through 12. We both worked on the entire show all day long, both going back to the same people over and over. But here's my point, Roddy, because, listen, I've put myself in your shoes, like, throughout this entire interview, and I understand without a shadow of a doubt, you know, how you were brought up in the business, how you came up in the business, what you went through being black. I understand all that. Okay. But, you know, Roddy, you got to understand, you know, my point of view and the business and the scars I have from the business that don't go away. Roddy, when I left wrestling, okay, it wasn't until the time that I left that I found out I got heat with this guy, I got heat with that guy, I got heat with this guy, and I got heat with a dozen guys.
Gotcha.
Okay? I find that out after I leave the wrestling business, and there's nothing I could do about it. I mean, you know, I don't have their numbers. They've already have heat with me. I don't even know about the heat.
But doesn't that tell you something?
Wait, no, let me finish. I'll tell you what it tells me. They built the heat up for years and years and years now, and I'm totally oblivious to the heat, just like I'm totally oblivious to the heat you had with me. Okay? Now here is the part that hurts me. Whether it's old school wrestling, old school psychology, whatever you want to call it, we're talking man to man here.
Yep.
When I'm out of the wrestling business, okay, and I have to hear interviews and read stuff by some of the boys and find out for the first time I have heat over something I didn't even know I did. I didn't even realize I did. I didn't think was a big deal. If I was wrong, I never had the opportunity to apologize. I have heat over all these things that I find out after the fact, but yet these same individuals I worked for years and years and years and years, and none of them ever told me while I was there to my face that they had a problem with me. Now, whether it's they're paranoid, they're going to lose their spot, whatever the wrestling logic is to that, the way I was brought up, when you have a problem with somebody, I don't care if he's head booker, assistant booker, it doesn't matter. Man to man, when you have an issue with somebody, you address it with them to their face. You stand before them and say, listen, we have an issue here. We have a problem here. We're two grown adults. Let's discuss this problem. That's what I did. That's the way I conducted business. I put myself in a room with Bill Goldberg, and I was afraid I was going to get killed because he had an issue with me, and I wanted to know what the issue was. So I went in a room alone with him while he was huffing and puffing, and I thought he was going to kill me because I wanted to know what his issue is. Now, don't you think it's pretty unfair for somebody in my shoes to find out after the fact, that I had heat with this one, I had heat with that one, and I had heat with his twin brother, when those same people I worked with for years and years and years, man to man, would never tell me to my face, so I would have the opportunity to either address it, explain myself, or apologize.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and let me just tell you this, that different scenarios, as a guy is in the business and gets his experience, and we'll talk about Rod. Okay, Roddy's there. If I think that I have an enemy or someone who we're not on the same page with, we're professionals. Okay, we're professional fighters, professional wrestlers. If I got somebody that is not going to respect me, or I think is going to try to take me off the totem pole, the last thing I'm going to do is tell them. Quick story. There's a gal that used to be on the Johnny Carson show, and she always brought animals on, cute little animals. John Schneider and I and my family, my little girls at that time, went to her zoo. And we came to the lions, and she said, watch the lions. And as we went by, the female lions got up in stalking. And you know what they looked at? They looked at my little girls. Because they're just trying to get a job done. They just want to eat. They don't want to fight. They don't want to tell us nothing. If I was to tip you off, say, hey, I got this problem, and you went back to the guy, whoever it may be, then I've already gave you my hand. Okay, Piper, you're out of here. If you don't like it, you're out of here. So communication in that form isn't always the smartest thing to do. It's what you do in the ring to overcome what they're trying to do to you. So I understand that hey, why don't you just be a man and come straight and tell me? Well, in the instance that I just spoke of with Ed Ferrara coming in, you did come in, and about a minute later, you come and got you. Okay, what do you want to do?
Roddy, but Roddy, you listen.
Yes, sir.
Roddy, two things, and listen. We're just talking man to man here.
Absolutely.
And Roddy, when you lay that out to me, my experience in working, with the thousands of wrestlers I did, my experience is when I hear you say those things, what I hear on my end of the phone is I hear somebody that's paranoid. And wrestlers are paranoid, and it's the business. I know why wrestlers are the way they are. I've worked with
but they got a right to be.
Of them.
They got a right to be, don't you think?
Roddy, I don't think they have a right. I think it depends on who they're working with. I don't think you can categorize every single person or a Vince Russo with promoters that you may have worked in when you were first coming up in the business. I don't think
gotcha.
Let me finish, Ryan. Let me just say this. I don't think that's fair to Vince Russo. It would be the equivalent of if I had to work with some wrestlers and they were really like just evil people, then guess what? In my mind now, every wrestler is an evil person, and I'm going to treat them as such. You know, everybody is a different human being and a different individual. I think I'm
going to tell you.
Wait, let me just finish my last thought.
Yes, sir. You got it. Take your time.
I hate the fact that incident you're talking about happened 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. I respect you more than you will ever know, and I hate the fact that it took me 15 years to hear that. And honestly, Roddy, I don't understand that because I'm not those guys. I know, but I mean, I'm not those guys that screwed you in the past or blackballed you in the past. Mm-hmm. I was the guy that was watching you on television and being molded to want to get in the professional wrestling business, and you taught me the entertainment aspect of the business. That's the guy I was.
Okay.
And, you know,
I
understand.
Go ahead.
I want you to I want you to talk.
No, and I thank you. Thank you very much. I understand that. Let me bring in part two to why is you're the head writer. You're the guy doing, okay, that's cool. But you're also featuring yourself on television. You want to be a star. You want to be recognized, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just please, let me get the thought track out.
Wait, right.
Allow me to get the thought track out.
Okay, but you're wrong about that.
Well, I'm not wrong that you were on television.
No, but you just said you wanted to be a star. You're wrong about that.
Excuse me, then I didn't mean, I was being facetious, pardon me.
Okay.
Let me back off that, I apologize. Let me try again. That you were putting yourself on television with the top guys. So, and you were cutting promos to the folks. Well, if Vince Russo was just the head writer and doing everything you've said you've done, I have no doubt that you put every ounce of everything you had in every show. I don't doubt any of that and your commitment. But what you're failing to see is, okay, I would understand, but when I see you on television, okay, all bets are off. Because you're in charge, you got the pencil. Now you're cutting promos, and you got a belt around you that belongs to one of the other guys, and you're cutting a promo, and then, I think you even did a thing where you, by accident, won the belt and gave it back. I don't want to get too far ahead, but we kind of, the David Arquette thing, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? Because you're featuring yourself on television. That's what the difference is, Vince. If you weren't on television, okay, you're being paranoid, Rod. But that brings a whole different element into it. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, it does, Roddy, but you're jumping to your own conclusions in your head of why I'm doing that. You don't know why. You didn't ask me. You didn't have a conversation with me.
It wasn't my business to ask you.
Okay, yeah, it is your business when I'm going to generate the heat from it.
But if you're just a second, if you're doing business with somebody else on television, whether I like it or don't like it, it's not, again, back with the code, and I understand the code is dead. Back with the code, I would never come and interfere with you. I would watch from afar and figure it out, but to come and interfere and say, hey, what are you guys doing? That would be way out of school for me to do. That not only is total disrespect, you could turn and say, that's none of your business. And you'd be right. My job is to get over and draw money with nobody's help other than, give me an opponent and a mic. And here I go. Well, I got the head writer who's, calling the shots, and he's on television in whatever capacity you want to say and making these calls on our business, yet he doesn't come and see me. That's where the danger is you're putting yourself on television. And that's a mistake that people have often made. It's difficult to write for everybody and write for yourself and keep the boat afloat and all. I mean, it's a ton of pressure. I know what it is. But do you see that's the difference? If you were just the head writer and you had the head of everything, but you weren't on the tube, okay, that's a different piece of work. But as soon as you put yourself on TV, okay, that's all bets are off now. Can you see
Roddy,
that?
Yeah, but again, Roddy, it's like I said, if you had an issue with me from day one, I just wish I would have. But
I did. I told Ed Ferrara. I said,
"Hey, tell me."
No, I told Ed who went and got you.
Okay, but Roddy, here's my point. Okay,
and I don't mean to make. Let me just please say this. I don't need to make a big, "Hey, Roddy's the diva" kind of thing, whatever you want to call it.
No, you're not. That's got nothing to do with it, Roddy. But listen, you're just. Here's the situation, and I've dealt with it a million times. Okay. Wrestlers have a tendency to be paranoid because of the wrestling business. The wrestling business made them that way. So basically, because they have this sense of paranoia, things happen, and they could be the littlest things in the world, and they're blown up out of proportion.
You ever had anybody stretch you, Vince? You ever been in the ring and have some old-timer all of a sudden hook you and put the sugar on you, start to take your breath away and go, now I'm going to let you breathe for 9, 8, 7. Now I'm not going to let you breathe for 10, 9, 8, 7, for like 5 or 6 minutes? You ever had that happen?
No.
I have. Have you ever had anybody in the ring that's all of a sudden, boom, just knocked your dick in the dirt and like, fuck, because he got pissed off? I've had that happen, or they tried. I've been hurt bad.
Right,
and they're not. It's not a play day in there. You know what? That's not the park in there of trees and wonderfulness and let's play games.
Right.
That's where, for instance, with me and Mr. T, or a lot of guys, that's a place where you get hurt. Let me just tell you this really quick: is the ring is the only place I know anyway. The ring is the only place you can go, kill a man, and go have lunch. It's real serious in that ring. Think about that for a second. If Mr. T and I had a problem and I was going to take him out, I didn't because I didn't want that deeming over me. Okay, but when you're in that ring and you're being combative and you're going for a spot and the other guy, especially if you've got two babies, whatever it is, that ring becomes very dangerous. And this is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing a guy that's pretty sincere in Vince Russo. Pretty sincere and has got his own ideas. And just because he has his own ideas, and I disagree with them, that doesn't make Vince Russo wrong. Not at all. And if Roddy Piper isn't open and receptive to all kinds of different comments, then damn you, Roddy, shut up and listen to the man. But when the man puts himself on television,
Roddy,
just a second, I let you speak. When a man puts himself on television and he's writing himself in and he's writing angles to go around him with the top talent and him, we go back to, I got 4 kids back there. These guys got no fun. They got no plans for me because I'm thinking maybe I need to take a hike then. And those probably were the most miserable days of my entire career, the WCW, which we can get into. And I just say, Vince, so you don't understand. It's not just the promoter. It's like somebody taking your spot. There's so many more dangers. I know I got in it with Nash. There's so many more dangers. When I was young, I don't know how many times I've been beat up, just out of nowhere. But that particular part, and I understand this, so I'm not trying to whip anybody, but often we've had people come in from outside our business. That's why I wouldn't take a dive from Mr. T, because here's the rules. WrestleMania, the very first one, I'm trying to get to Vince's office as fast as I can. And Hogan's in the office, and Vince, and I'm talking on the phone. No, don't let him throw a punch. He wanted to throw our heads together and all the stuff you see on professional wrestling. And this guy is the biggest, probably the biggest television star in the world at the time, Mr. T. And he wants to come and fling us around. I've got everybody, every heel, every other wrestler looking at me like, hey, dude, come on, take us. I'm the representative of everybody in the business when I go against Mr. T, because the rules are no. And you look back in that match, I told Vince, told Hogan, I told everybody that was concerned, not one punch, nothing, keep it amateur wrestling with T. And you go back and look at that match. I actually front-faced him and blocked him because he's running out of air to get to Hogan to tag him so he could carry the ball. So with Mr. T, when we got in there, I had to make sure, and Orndorff, boom, we had to keep him where he wouldn't expose business. And then, boom, it got over because there was no air, everything. It was incredibly difficult to pull off in live action with a guy that doesn't know anything about the business, who's got an ego bigger than mine, which is hard. But you know what? It's my job. And boom, I'm in there. And I ain't backing off. That's part of the business, Vince, that I don't ever hear your understanding of it. And so, like the paranoia part of the promoter, okay, and you know what? Here's the saying for that. 3 wrestlers are sitting on a bench. The wrestler in the middle stands up and says, hey, I got to take a pee. I'll be right back. As he's walking away, the other 2 wrestlers look at each other and go, what do you think he's up to? He's taking a pee. That's it. Hey, what do you think he's up to? Because wrestlers are that paranoid. But what, did you going to be fired? No. Someone's going to take my head off in the ring when I'm not looking. That equation you have never thought of until I said it right now. Gotcha.
Roddy.
Gotcha. And hey,
Roddy,
it's a shoes, brother. No,
Can I say?
You gotta walk. You gotta walk a mile in the shoes, brother.
Can I say something?
Please bring it on, bud.
All right. I come into WCW. I'm there for the first 3 months.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Kevin Sullivan, who was booking with us.
Yes.
Okay.
Satan.
Suggested the powers that be angle because they were doing that on Seinfeld at the time with the George Steinbrenner character.
I remember it.
So Sullivan suggests, why don't you be the powers that be? Like Seinfeld, they never see you, they just hear you.
Okay.
Kevin Sullivan's suggestion. Okay, Kevin, that sounds fine. We did the powers that be based on that suggestion. I never showed my face. Okay?
Okay.
WCW politics kick into play, and the next thing I know, I'm sitting at home for the next 3 months. Okay? So now I've been in WCW for 6 months. I did the powers that be, never showed myself on television. They sit me home for 6 months. The ratings go in the toilet again. Mm-hmm. So Brad Siegel calls me back and said, Vince, I want you to come back to creative, but you're going to come back and you're going to work with Eric Bischoff. Okay?
All right.
Eric Bischoff and myself had never worked together before.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Go.
Brad Siegel put a ton of pressure on the both of us to bring the ratings back, to get the ratings back, because in my absence, we lost an entire ratings point.
Got it.
So So he gave me and Eric Bischoff a little bit of time to come up with, the first show and map out the direction that we were going in. Okay?
All right.
Eric Bischoff suggested that I play a character on television. Okay?
All right.
Now, I'm sitting there saying, okay, well, I've never worked with Eric Bischoff before. Eric suggests this. I really don't want to poo-poo it. They've sent me home for 3 months already. I went home for 3 months. And Brad Siegel is putting a heck of a lot of pressure on us to get ratings.
Okay.
So I say,
he's paying you a lot of
Eric,
money.
yeah, I say, okay, Eric, if you think that's a good idea, then that's what I'll do. That's the way the story played out in real life. Off the bat, the way you phrased that entire story was you put yourself on television because you wanted to be a star.
Well, I recanted that. I think that was a little flippant.
Well, but even
I don't think it bothered you though. It looks like you're having a good time.
But even the fact of you put yourself on television.
I see where you're coming from.
Roddy, I wasn't on television until I worked with Eric, and we were working together, and he was a character on television, and he suggested that I show my face on television. That's how me being on television came about. Now again, it's like, you're there. All this stuff is building and building and building about my feelings towards Vince Russo for all these reasons. And I don't think it's fair to me that I don't know about it. I don't know what's going on. I don't know that you're feeling this way. I'm not a mind reader. And I really think it sucks that it takes me 15 years to find all that out. That's all.
I think that the point, though, that I'm making, for me to go and have confronted you, I did it at the time. I took care of it with Ed Ferrara, and he went and grabbed you, and it was done. And so, okay, did I need to say it to anybody? I never did. Run off. I'm just pointing out when we're past the thing with Owen. I'm just pointing out you were saying wrestlers are paranoid, and I understand that. And that's true, but I was pointing out the different reasons or why. And again, with respect to you, and we're learning what you're saying, okay, it was not your idea, but Eric Bischoff's never been in the ring either. And that's no disrespect because I actually got along with Eric fine. But that's what's being handed. Now, if you remember in the WCW, there was a lot of, I don't even know the word for it. Backstage was just miserable. People were just making miserable. What is your book? How to Lose $60 Million in a Year?
Yeah.
So, okay, I hear what you're saying, and I give it validity. I'm just saying from where I was looking and from what they were doing with me, I was making the translations. Whether I needed to go to another place to feed my family or stay where I am. How much? And it breaks down to like, well, how much you paying? And they were paying enough and having me not on TV. Okay, I'll stay no matter how miserable it is. But I don't think it had to be that miserable. I think, what do you think the number one reason for the demise, if you can do it in one, the demise of the WCW?
Well, what do you mean by demise? It just being
losing $60 million. It did. It went from it was a great territory. It was on fire, and all of a sudden, boom, they're going.
Roddy, I worked for WCW for 9 months. That's how long that was my tenure at WCW, 9 months.
Gotcha.
The years that led up to that, to put them in a position like that, I have absolutely no idea. If I lost WCW $62 million in what I did as the TV writer for 9 months, then I'm damn good, man. I got to give myself credit. If I lost the company, if I was bro, if my television was that bad that I lost $62 million in 9 months, then somebody should hire me to write television, because if it's that bad, it's that good.
So let me bring this full circle in back to Crash TV. When you're shooting Crash TV, hot shotting, whatever the word you want to use it, these are some of the things that happen where the tail starts wagging the dog, and when you're swerves, unexpected heel turns, like we in the first part of this show we talked about. Crash TV is that's a great name for it. That you kind of your baby you brought along, and you did great with it in getting the WWF to come along. But again, guys trying to do shoot interviews, but they're really working, using inside language, heel, babyface, whatever it may be. I don't know who made David Arquette the champion, but that's just so wrong in so many different ways. But make gimmick matches. I mean, that's one of the things that Crash TV does, is it affects everybody in the locker room. It's Crash TV. It's self-explanatory. Oh, shit. Crash TV, here comes a fucking train wreck, pardon my French. And it's on your toe TV. Look out what's coming now. Oh, it's a swerve. Look. Okay, well, hang on. Hang time. Everybody out of the pool. What's going on? Who's in charge of what? And how do you want me to draw money here? Do you see how that could perpetuate that, Vince? That feeling in the dressing room? Because it's
Roddy, that was a time in the business where I think Steve Austin or Mick Foley or Shawn Michaels or The Rock, I think that was a time in the business where every single one of those guys made more money than they ever did at any other point in the wrestling business.
I think that's true.
I know that's true. You know, buddy, you get paid by, the gate and the house shows. I mean, that's how you guys get paid. Whether you loved me or hated me, the world was watching the product, and as a performer, you were making more money than you ever did your entire life. How can anybody put a negative spin on that?
And it's not whether you loved or hated Vince Russo. That it's business. That doesn't work. It's, hey, am I being used or not? That would be the terminology.
And if you read anything about me, Roddy, if anybody has anything nice to say about me, the one thing they always say is Vince Russo utilized every single person up and down that card, when you should know for a fact the only person Vince McMahon ever cares about is what's the top guy doing? What's John Cena doing? That's it. That's all he wants to know. Back in the day, what's Austin doing? What's Rock doing? It was up to Vince Russo to come up with something for every single person on that roster, week in, week out. I did that better than anybody, and those people made more money than they ever have before or since in the wrestling business. I just don't understand how that's a bad thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, I got to take a break. We'll be right back. When you're ready to buy a car, TrueCar is changing car buying forever. Yes, TrueCar helps a car buyer get rid of the fear that they might overpay. Every day, TrueCar users receive negotiation-free, guaranteed savings, and TrueCar users save up an average of $3,221 off MSRP. When you're ready to buy a car, you just follow 3 easy steps. Download the TrueCar mobile app or go to TrueCar.com to find out what others have paid for the car you want. Then register to see upfront pricing information and lock in your savings. Third step is simple. Take your guaranteed savings certificate to the TrueCar certified dealer for a better, hassle-free car buying experience. Some features not available in all states. With TrueCar, you can save time, save money, never overpay. To see how much you can save on the car you want, simply download the TrueCar mobile app or visit TrueCar.com today. Back with Vince Russo, talking about, Vince was just saying that when he was booking the WWF, WWE, everybody made more, including me, made more money than they've ever made in their entire career. And I understand that. I think one thing that's missing here is when, let's see, about 75, 76, 77, Portland, there started a surge around the world. Portland, Charlotte, Atlanta. I was on the Spanish TV for 3 years that went every place in the world that Spanish was spoke. I was on TBS for a couple of years that went every place in the world. So before I ever got to New York, I was known all around the world. And I was making, but it's true, I made more money in the WWF than I made in those territories, without a doubt. But Vince, I don't think it was your writing as much as it was a whole, and I'm not, as much as it was, there was a whole surge from about 77, and when it came to like 85, 86, it was just on fire. You came in 91, 92, and then that's when, I went over to WCW, and one thing that I disagree with, like the wars, it wasn't a bloody war. Whoever made that up, I'm not fighting war with anybody. I'm just trying to make a living here, and they started making it personal. So I don't, we can talk about that in a second, but yeah, made a lot of money there, but, set it up. It took years to set that up, Vince. I had to be Roddy Piper and Ric Flair, and who else had to be Ric Flair 24/7 to get the confidence of the fan back from the breakdown in 62 with Gorgeous George, where it turned into territories. The amount of work that it took to get when you came in, the amount of work that it took by a handful of individuals around the country to make that bubble surge, pro wrestling, surge again, where yourself, just being honest, you were 12 or whatever it was when, you caught it. And like everybody around the world was doing the same thing. And so by the time we got to 85, it was ready to be on the worldwide stage. So yes, yeah, but you got to give credit to.
Oh yeah, Roddy. I mean, nobody's denying. I said it. I guess I should say it again because it was part one in the interview. I wouldn't have made a living if it wasn't for you guys. I have no problem saying that whatsoever. You okay. Roddy Piper put food on my table. End of story. That is a fact. But my point is, listen, WWE was in the red in 1994. They were in very bad straits. WCW was kicking their backside. Vince McMahon was vulnerable, and he was showing his vulnerability, and he never does. Roddy, I was there when Vince announced to everybody in the office that you went to WCW, and he was not the Vince McMahon He was beaten. He was battered. And he told everybody, well, they got Roddy now. The WWE was in a horrible state in 1994. The Attitude Era comes around. Now, if people think I take credit for the Attitude Era, when first of all, I've said to nauseum 1,000,000 times that it was every single person involved from Kevin Dunn to the cameraman to Jim Johnson with the music to the wrestlers to the producers, everybody involved in making that era a success. The bottom line is, getting back to my original point, it was a time in business when wrestlers made more money at that point than they ever had in their life. That was the most meaningful thing to me, that you guys were in the ring, busting your backsides, blowing out knees, blowing out backs, getting concussions on a daily basis, doing something that I never in the world would attempt to do because you have to be gifted and special to do it. So what meant more to me than anything was having the ability to be a part of that and seeing the guys benefit from a monetary point of view. I can't see the negative in that.
Okay. You were there 2 years, was it, Vince? At the where we're talking. I'm sorry, when you were just talking about with the Attitude Era.
Well, I'd say it started sometime in '96, and I left in like '99.
Why'd you leave?
Well, I told you the comment with Vince.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So then you went TNA. I'm trying to get to TNA here.
I went to WCW.
You went to WCW, and right. Didn't they let you go and then hire you back with Bischoff at the same time, something like that?
Yeah, well, they didn't. Yeah, they didn't have to hire me back. I was under contract.
Okay.
So they
By the way, I've been fired so many times. I'm not. I'm not a judge. Okay. So, what do you think of Eric Bischoff as a businessman and as a facilitator of our business to make it grand?
Well, first of all, I wish I was the businessman he was, because I'd probably be sitting here as rich as he is, and I'm not. Trust me. So
I hear you.
as far as business, as far as taking chances, Eric is incredible. I mean, Eric knows how to make money, and Eric's not afraid of taking chances. On the other side of that coin, I don't think Eric's strong points are creative. That's my experience working with him. I think, he's much more, valuable in a management position, no question about it. And sometimes I didn't appreciate the way I was treated by Eric as a human being, or the way I saw him treat some other people. We're two different kinds of people. He treats people and deals with people a certain way. I treat people and deal with them a completely different way.
Do you think that some people are kind of making you a scapegoat for all the WWF and WCW problems with there? Are they just throwing heat your way because they can't stand up to the plate?
Well, what are you talking about? People inside the business?
Yeah, just as we've been talking here, and you were saying I didn't know I had heat with this guy and that guy and the other. Do you feel that people are using you as a scapegoat just for their own mistakes?
I just think because of, first of all, Roddy, let me say this. Nobody ever had a bad thing, or nobody. Let me take back bad. Nobody had ever had anything to say about Vince Russo when he was writing the WWE television. The negativity didn't start with Vince Russo until he appeared as a character on camera at WCW.
That's pretty interesting, isn't it, Vince?
Yeah. Well, I know why, Roddy. Because you know how you become a success in wrestling. It's real simple. You take the core of who you are, and you magnify that 1,000,000 times over. You take your personal persona, who you are, what your beliefs are, what you think, and you make that bigger than life.
But Vince, that's just what I was saying was once you put yourself on TV and you just kind of backed it up there, all of a sudden you started getting heat from places deserved or not deserved, and that's why. That's why right there.
Yeah, but yeah. So what I was getting at is people who didn't know me, the internet, that character they saw on TV, they thought that was Vince Russo. Brash, cocky, New Yorker. Everybody loves to hate a New Yorker. They thought that was me. No, that wasn't me. That was my character. People hated that character so much that began seeping over into, well, we hate this guy as a human being. So now if we hate this guy as a human being, now we hate everything he does. And after a while, it becomes folklore. It becomes, I'm Paul Bunyan, and hating Vince Russo is the cool thing to do. And everybody jumps on the bandwagon. Unfortunately, those people that hate me have no idea who I am, have no idea what type of a husband or father or Christian that I am. They just think that's the guy on TV.
I understand that, and I agree with it 100%. But again, I go back to when you got somebody writing it and somebody on TV at the same time. That we've been over that. Tell me, why do you think they're just want just to get your general thoughts? You've been very. First of all, I want to thank you for being so open and a gentleman about this. The things that are going on now. Why do you think there's no real new breakout stars, or do you think there are? And what would you do if you were running the WWE right now? Just play here for a second.
Well, Roddy, I'm going to be honest with you, and you're not going to agree with it.
Okay.
But I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay. Am I that much of an asshole?
No.
And you tell that Ed Ferrara.
No, not at all. Not at all. We just come from two completely different schools, and I respect the school you come from more than anybody.
Thank you.
And I think, again, in this is my opinion, Roddy, I think when Ed Ferrara and myself left, Ed Ferrara and myself, we were television writers. We handled Raw like it was a television show from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and we were competing with every other television show out there. That's how we handled it. In my opinion, since that time, in the last 15 years, I feel that rather than build on what the attitude was and bring the wrestling business forward, just like you did, bro, there was no Roddy Piper character before you. There wasn't. Without a Roddy Piper character, there wouldn't have been an MTV gig. There wouldn't have been Cyndi Lauper. There wouldn't have been WrestleMania without the Roddy Piper character. So rather than the Attitude Era, the success of the era, rather than push forward with that, in my opinion, wrestling people went right back into place. Wrestling people got involved with the product again, and I feel rather than evolve it, they went backwards where it became wrestling again. And by that I mean, the predictable wrestling again. The casual fans weren't going to be interested in it if they weren't wrestling fans, because if you're not a wrestling fan, you don't want to watch a wrestling match. I may watch the other stuff, but once you go back to just wrestling, you're taking away all those fans on the fringe that aren't necessarily wrestling fans. They're television viewers. But if you do something on your show that they're interested in, now you're going to get the casual fan to start watching your show again because it's cool and it's hip, just like it was in the Attitude Era, just like it was WrestleMania 1, 2, 3, MTV Rock and Wrestling. Same exact thing. Roddy, here's the thing that I have a problem with, and I'd love you to answer this for me.
Go.
Okay?
You betcha.
And right, I got to tell you something, and this is where my heart and head is at. I do a podcast too, Roddy, on my website. I'm not going to give it a cheap plug.
No, please. What's the name of it? I ask you, please.
PyroandBallyhoo.com.
PyroBellyWho.com. PyroBellyWho.com.
Yeah, Roddy, you know who my guest is on my show? I tape my show on the weekend. You know who my guest is this upcoming weekend that I'm so excited about?
No. Who?
King Kong Bundy.
He's a great guy.
Okay, that's me. But Roddy, here's the thing, and I'd love you to answer this for me. When I looked at my love of wrestling and watching wrestling over the years, and Roddy, I'm not talking about anymore when I'm a 12 or 13-year-old kid. I'm talking about, now I'm in my 20s, Roddy. I'm in my 30s now, okay?
Gotcha.
I'm still watching this product because you have the Macho Man Randy Savage, the Ted DiBiase, the Roddy Piper, the Jimmy Snookers, the King Kong Bundys, the Big John Studs. The list goes on and on and on. You had these guys that, as a fan watching from home, these were wrestlers. This is what wrestlers are supposed to look like. This is what wrestlers are supposed to sound like. Every single one of these guys would kick the ever-loving crap out of me if I ever said the wrong thing to them.
Gotcha.
That's what you believe. Larger than life. Roddy Piper is what a wrestler should be. Junkyard Dog, what a wrestler should be. Well, fast forward to 2014. You put on Raw, on a weekly basis, or TNA for that matter. It doesn't matter. And all of a sudden, what you're seeing, the majority of the guys, you're seeing regular guys. You're just seeing guys that look like regular guys. They don't look like wrestlers. They don't act like wrestlers. When I look at some of these guys, I honestly think I might be able to take one or two of them. I mean, that's what I really think. They're not larger than life anymore. And, since you were one of the guys that no doubt was, I would just love to hear your theory of why wrestlers, like going back to the early days of WrestleMania, why wrestlers like that are few and far between today.
That's a great question. I'm going to address it right after this break. We'll be right back.
Guess what?
What?
Pauly Shore's now on Podcast One.
Try and experience when I'm about to chirp in your lobes, okay, cool?
That's right. You can download new episodes of his Interested podcast every week. And while you're at it, check out all of his 2014 episodes for free through the end of January.
Oh, buddy.
So if you're a Pauly Shore fan, there's no better way to start the new year.
This is what put this place on the map.
It's our gift to you from podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
There they are. Okay, we're back. So Vince has just laid out to ask me a question of why do I think, and let me get it right, why do I think that the wrestlers of today, they're not your stereotypical wrestlers that we had in the 80s? Is that the way to put it?
Well, really not larger than life stars that were literally, back in your day, literally movie stars.
Yeah. It's a good question. I think that wrestling has become the WWE, a public stock. There's a responsibility. I think that over time, things have happened that has changed the course of the business, and that the reason they have, I'm sorry, what's the name of that, the tall, like Andre the Giant kind of guy from India?
Boy. The one that they just released, right? The Giant Kali?
Giant Kali. The reason that he's on the WWE is in India, it's the second highest rated show, just under cricket. And so you have the Giant Kali. Even though from the waist down he's suffering, they need that picture because in India, he's a wrestling god. The industry has to answer to the public, and traditionally, we tell you what to think. You don't tell us. And that concept has been lost, especially with social media. The same thing with there is no independent thought allowed. Wait a second, Rod. It's minimal, the amount of independent thought that one individual can interject in a 3-hour Raw. and that's being microscoped of what everybody's doing. Well, when you have that, you have everybody walking on eggshells, and you have nobody that's going to let loose. Yeah, go get them, because it's corporate. And the argument being made, I suppose, would be what you said, and it was true, is like they're making so much money. But how are they? Oh, second highest rated show in India? They're in China now? They're in Russia? Get us a Russian. You know, a Chinaman. I don't care if he's 5'2", get him here. There's the whole complex situation has changed. So now you know why the giant Kali is on there. And you don't take a chance on a Roddy Piper. You know, CM Punk was doing a good job. And boom, he left for reasons only he knows. But I think it's what you're trying to say is larger than life. So they're being held on to. They've got a camp now that you have to go through, I've been told, in Florida, and they're being taught how to wrestle. But it's by these individuals, whoever they may be. And it's the way that people that have never been in the ring envision for the whole world to see as a public company. And WrestleMania, you know, very first, it used to be, I saw this myself, come up to the arena, and I saw on the marquee, Hulk Hogan versus Roddy Piper. When, I don't know, 86, let's say. And 87, come to the same marquee, it just said WWF. So the brand itself is what, and of course, you know, they want the brand to draw money, but what that does is that compromises the individual and doesn't allow the individual wrestler to be larger than life, because they won't let anybody be larger than the WWE. Does that make any sense to you?
That makes a lot of sense. But so let me ask you this: with that being said, where do you think the business is heading?
Oof. Good question. You know, like Mad Dog said, you know, wrestling will never die. And it's a hell of a question.
Are you? Let me phrase it this way, because Roddy, I'm being honest with you. Listen, I'm still in the wrestling business, you know, and you are too. With obviously with your podcast, you'll always be in the wrestling business. I'm still in the wrestling business with what I'm doing. Roddy, I'm concerned. I'm
Yes.
really concerned.
I am too.
Because, you know, I don't have your history, you know, obviously, but even going back, you know, I mean, I go back 40 years now, and I've watched it over the years, and where it is right now, I'm very, very concerned, and I would just love to hear, you know, your thoughts.
I see what you're saying.
You know,
yeah, we're talking, what you're saying is from where you're coming. You give it everything you got. You give it your heart in your way, as do I in my way. I give it everything I got. And yes, I am afraid for my industry that gave me a family. Let's understand, just speaking for myself, I'm so grateful and so lucky that I just accidentally fell into pro wrestling. I was just a kid on the street, and so I love them so much. Everybody that answers a bell, that I sincerely am concerned for where wrestling is headed. And there's a changing of the guard that's happening. And, you know, it's not special anymore. When you put Raw, and you as a writer, when you put Raw to 3 hours from 2 hours, 3 hours, whoosh, whoosh. That's a lot of TV. As a heel, geez, I can't believe he got me talking like this. Who's running this damn thing? Me or you?
No,
I gotta go now. I gotta go now, bud. Go. So as a heel, myself, he's a general in the ring. You don't do nothing unless I say so. And it's my responsibility to make sure that it works. I just don't let somebody pick me up and body slam me. That's a ruck. It's way more intricate than that. But that's been lost because the moves are supposed to be just like words, a translation for something much bigger that is psychology that you're trying to get to them. When you wrestle today, for instance, if I was wrestling wherever, today in New York, when I get in the ring, I'm wrestling for next week. Meaning, I've wrestled many territories, they have the same towns in 7 days, same towns. I'm wrestling for next week. The reason those people are there is because last week I wrestled for next week. That terminology, they won't understand what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's been lost, as has been like the respect for the moves and how much pain that you go through. Here's an instance. I was in Charlotte, and I came out of the ring, and I missed the rope and came down, hit my head. There was a big lump on it. And I get back to the dressing room, and the promoter says, "Hey, are you okay?" I go, "Yes, sir, I'm fine," because you're never supposed to. I had an old time. It was Alfred Hayes. Old time I had my head down, and boom, he slapped me. He says, don't you ever tell them you're fine, because they don't appreciate what you're going through. Mm-hmm. They don't understand. And then these guys, all the credit in the world to them, they're doing these moves, boom, 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 and they're hurting, but they won't say so. They're following instructions, as opposed to, yes, I'll follow the instructions, absolutely, I'm with you, but when the bell rings, baby, like I just said, I'm the boss. And it's my responsibility to make that work the way, if Vince Russo gives me something and I say, yeah, it's my responsibility to make that work the way Vince Russo asked me to. The way I get it to work is my business. But the end of it, it has to be what you asked for. And that's lost. It's a package they're selling. It's not individuals.
Roddy, you know what's the two things that I learned? And I spent, Roddy, I spent my last 10 years at TNA, and there were 80% of the guys were just, so green behind the gills, right?
Gotcha.
This is what I learned firsthand, and I think you'll agree with this, okay? And Roddy, you have to understand, like, I am so character-driven. To me, character is everything. I mean, Roddy, you will have a payday when you're 95 years old because you can just walk to the ring and go back and they'll give you $20,000 because you're Roddy Piper.
God bless you.
Character, right? What's the truth? This is the two things I found, Roddy, and I think you'll agree with this, and I'm sure you've had these same thoughts, but in the position I was in, this was my frustration. Number one, the one thing that I learned is a lot of the generation of wrestlers now, they grew up in the video game era. So, and they still play video games, Roddy, and they grew a love for wrestling by playing video games in front of their television, whereas, I would have saw an Albano or an Ernie Ladd or, Snooker, all those guys. That's not their background. They played video games. They played wrestling video games. That's what they wanted to do. And Roddy, when you look at a wrestling video game, it's move, 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 move. Obviously, you can't have psychology in a wrestling video game, right?
Absolutely. You're
so
right.
Now here's the problem, Roddy. This is why nobody gets over. What happens now is now they come to the arena, okay? Now they're going over their match, and they're going over spot. Nobody's selling anything. No. But here's what happens, Roddy. Because they're so concentrated on remembering the 50 spots in the 5-minute match, because they're so focused on the spots, you know what they do? The first thing they do is the character during the match gets thrown out the window. They totally forget how their character would sell, how their character would react, how their character would go on the offensive. They totally forget that because they're so concentrated on remembering spots. And what happens is, Roddy, the end result is when that happens, match after match after match, guess what? All of a sudden, everybody is the same.
Now, I tell you why they're doing that also is one thing. I hate music. I hate pyrotechnics. I just want to come out. Because when I come out, I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to feel the building. When I get in the ring, I'm going to tell you this. When I get in the ring, the first thing I do is I look at the other guy's boots, if I've never wrestled him before. And if the toes are worn out, I know he's going to come at me. If the heels are worn out, I know how he's going to wrestle. I'm doing some math here. I'm also thinking, I can't do that with somebody shut the damn music off. If I need bagpipes, I came fifth in the world. I can play them myself. Right now, I need you to shut up and if I go out there and I feel that crowd is on an 8 and I just had a rocking match, I'll probably go out there and start on 1. If I go out there and I'm feeling it like they're sitting on their hands, I might start an 8, bring it down to a 4. I don't know. Well, what you're saying is, I agree with you, is that you come out, the entrance is so grand, and the huge monitor, the big screen, and boom, and then you ring the bell. It's like, geez, that's it. So they feel the compulsion to hide an insecurity as go, 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 and that's where that's why they're wrestling like that. Too much hype. You can't cut a promo. If you cut a promo, when you go for that match, you need to remember the promo and do what you said in the promo. Otherwise, you lose your credibility.
They wouldn't even think about that today. They would never make that connection.
No, and that's sad. And I'm worried about that too. If you, Vince, just if you could, I don't know. Do you still watch WWE and?
Yeah,
TNA?
no, I Roddy, I'll be honest with you. First of all, like you said, the 3 hours absolutely kills them.
Oof.
Roddy, yeah, I have to watch the show because, like, I do a review on a podcast when the show is over. But, Roddy, I'll be honest with you. As a wrestling fan through and through, if I didn't have to watch that show every Monday night, I wouldn't.
Too long.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
What would you do? That's interesting. So if you just today, if Linda McMahon gave you a call and get in there and Vince threw the magazines out, say, we want Vince Russo, what would you do? And I'm not holding you nothing here. What would you do, though, with the WWE, if you walked in it today?
Well, Roddy, I mean, the first thing I would do, and this would never happen because, like you said, it's all corporate now, and they have to make as much money as they can, and it's a business, and I totally get that. The first thing I would do is cut the show to 2 hours, number one. But I understand they can. I understand,
Absolutely, though.
USA's giving them a boat of money. I understand. But, Roddy, I just think it goes back to your era. And I still believe it's character and storyline because, Roddy, character and storyline is always going to capture the casual fan if they're not wrestling fans. So that's what I would do. I would go back to the basics of the character. Roddy, you watch the show now, right?
Sure.
My favorite character on the show, Roddy, is, and I used you as an example in one of my columns today, okay? My favorite character on the show is Bray Wyatt.
Okay.
Okay, and that makes sense, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So Roddy, I'm watching the show the other day, and you know how they position this Bray Wyatt. Roddy, the guy cuts the best promo in the world.
It's great. It's great
Unbelievable
stuff.
promo. And that's coming from him. Nobody can write that stuff,
Sure.
So, he himself has created this unbelievable character, that's, he's a great character. And
Yep.
Roddy, I'm sitting there and they want you to believe, he does that back over spider and this guy is twisted
weird.
and
Yeah.
and demented, and he looks like
Gets your
he's
attention.
insane. He's
Gets
got
your
the whole
attention.
thing. Yeah, he's got the whole thing going, right?
Yeah.
So I'm watching him in a match the other night, Roddy, and I'm watching this match, and I'm assuming because he's a heel, and this is what I mean about just the rules of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's a heel, do you know what he does in a match?
No.
He runs away. And I'm looking at a guy like Bray Wyatt, and I'm like, listen,
Ooh,
I
mistake.
understand he's a heel.
Yeah,
I
but
get it.
yeah.
But just, and the first thing I thought about, I swear, was you. I'm
Yeah.
like, listen, Roddy Piper, maybe at some point or another he ran. I don't remember ever in my life seeing Roddy Piper run. I
No.
don't remember seeing Jake Roberts run.
No.
Why is this character running?
It's wrong.
And but you know what that is, right? And I don't need to tell you. You know better than anybody. It's a lack of character development.
And I'm
You know,
sure, yes. Yes.
Yeah, Roddy, the one thing I used to do, and again, bro, you and I, because of where we're from, we come from totally different planets.
Yes,
Okay?
we do. Yes, we do.
Roddy, I will tell you, this is what I did, and I took great pride in this, okay?
All right.
When I was writing for a character, Roddy, it could have been Austin, it could have been Rock, it could have been Shawn, Brett, it didn't matter. What I did as a writer was I put myself in the boots of that wrestler. And the question always was, what would Austin do if this happened? How would Austin react to this? What would Brett say if they did this to him? So every character I looked at as a individual, and they all acted a different way.
Gotcha.
When you look at that product today and the art of characters, they're all doing the same thing. They don't have personalities of their own. Nothing stands out. And like I said, when you make a guy like Bray Wyatt run away, something's wrong.
I'd like to, and we're doggone it. We're coming to the end of this. I would like to say, though, like with Bray Wyatt and everybody else, anybody that answers a bell, total respect. So, sometimes it's easy to criticize somebody, and you just like you said, and I know that you mean the same thing. It's total
Roddy,
respect to these guys.
Ray Wyatt was told to run.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no question
No.
that. No, bro, let me make this clear. And Roddy, I'm glad that you say that. When I watch that show now, Roddy, there isn't one guy or girl that's not giving 150%.
No,
I
they're
mean,
all in.
Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Bray
Great.
Wyatt, these guys
Great guys.
are going, I'm going to say it, Roddy, they're going balls to the wall.
Yeah, they are.
No question about that.
I love them.
What I'm having a problem with is the material that they're giving.
I hear you. That's I'm on the same page with you there. This is I have no more time. It's been enlightening. It's been respectful, and there's been
Roddy,
a lot of talk out.
you got to let me ask you one question.
Go, champ.
Do you have time for one question?
Yeah, I got time.
Roddy, I'm the biggest mark in the world for It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I love, Roddy, your role. I can't watch the episodes enough. I got to ask you two questions. Number one, is the Maniac going to reappear on the show? And number two, just give me a little inside flavor of what it's like working with those guys.
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They're big wrestling fans. They're wonderful guys. Charlie Day. He's a little afraid, but he has a hard time keeping a straight face. They, and they play the Maniac and look over at him. That's kind of, he's not sure if I'm going to fire or not fire. But all in all, they're avid fans of ours and our business, and they're great human beings. They all grew up together, and they've covered. And I think that. I didn't know this, but I think the show is like the number 9 watch show in the world. And and they started with like one camera, and they did a scene, and they got Danny DeVito, and they're wonderful people. and I was proud to be on there. Maybe
Hey,
Domaniac will come back. I don't know.
I got to tell you, Roddy, you know, you want to talk about great writing and great characters.
There
that
you go.
show, I mean, that show just tells it all.
It's a great show, and I thank you, and I thank you for coming on my podcast, and I thank you for being so honest and upfront. And it's been a pleasure. I hope that that you feel good that you were given a forum to explain some things. I feel good about it. And again, you've got 3 beautiful children, and it's Christmas time, coming out of the holiday season. I wish you nothing but the best, and to your family. And I just, again, thank you for being a professional. And, you know, go start writing for the WWE. Don't forget, I'm the champion. Bring Piper in, pay him the most damn money, and tell Ed Ferrara I owe him a cup of coffee.
And put him on and put him on last.
And put him on last.
Roddy, I got to tell you, listen, again, I want to thank you for this opportunity. This conversation and clearing all this means more to me than you'll ever know. And like I say, Roddy, I have no problem saying whatsoever, if it wasn't for you and you blazing the trail, I would have been selling televisions for a living. I would have continued that career. It's the truth, and I want you to know that. And on behalf of every wrestling fan, I mean, I just thank you for the decades of entertainment, man.
That's really kind. Thank you very much. Next time we're in the same town, let's sit down and have a Coke and have a chat, huh?
Sounds great, man.
God bless you and your family for Christmas. Thank you for going on, ladies and gentlemen. Take care. Bye-bye.